All right, chat. Welcome in to the Central Committee stream with your host, Mike from PA. We are live once again. How is everybody doing? Did you see Snoop Dogg repping the Steelers last night? Of course, he's always been a Steeler fan. Welcome on in. Welcome on in to the Central Committee stream where we are going to push the most brutal Chinese and communist propaganda to the unwitting masses. We will fool them for our grand conspiracy to provide them with high quality social and public housing, free health care, free college, paid medical and family leave, a clean environment, clean water, respecting our ecology, an end of aggressive wars, and funding for the arts and science, where we take humanity to the stars. Can you imagine a fate worse than death? Fully automated luxury gay space communism. Your job just got easier. All the paid U.S. propagandists are crying about losing their funding. That's how Dino Doodle. The answer is neither. Facing the loss of their entire federal grant funding, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children just caved and agreed to remove all references to LGBTQ youth and will dead name and misgender missing trans youth going forward. That's utterly disgusting. So welcome on in, everybody. It is Friday the 7th of February. It's also Vio's birthday, chat. It's actual Vio birthday. Isn't that crazy? It's actually Vio's real birthday. What? Vio is doing a birthday stream. She wants to make this like really complicated olive cake. It's like a savory dish. It's not really a cake, but she really hates olives, and she's sitting there in like a cart full of like olive related food. And I'm just like, you're doing this all to yourself. You're doing this all to yourself. I mean, I don't mind it. Like, I'll have a little piece of it, but like, it'll probably be decent. But, you know, Vio really, really thought about her olive themed birthday. It's very, very funny. So this is all very intentionally. I don't know what it's like. It's like, how do you even describe it? It's like someone setting up a ball kicking machine and like they're like, you know, making sure it swings freely into their nuts. You know what I mean? It's just like, and they don't like it. This is the most important part. They don't like it. It's not a sex thing. They're not getting off of it. They just getting hurt, and they're like making sure that they get hurt in the most entertaining way possible. What can he say? What can he say? Vio is sacrificing for their art. You know, the crash out of Ethan Klein. I think a lot of people look at it as political, but it's not political, right? Like, Ethan is using politics because he's just afraid to say the reason he hates Hassan is because Hassan thinks that he's a bad person and doesn't want to be his friend anymore, right? Like, it is maybe in Ethan's mind, he doesn't even want to be Hassan's friend anymore, but you could only suffer this amount of pain and this amount of fixation if you're feeling rejected. Right? Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, this is Ethan Klein feeling rejected, feeling hated, feeling ugly, feeling like a bad person, jealous, and wishing that he could go back to the time that they were friends, or friendly at least. We call it narcissistic injury. I've talked about it before. Narcissistic smear campaigns, narcissistic injury. It's all the same thing. It's how narcissists react to rejection and loss. And I think the thing that has really kicked it into overdrive is because there is a ceasefire in Gaza, right? Because the issue that supposedly caused their breakup is not as violently in our faces anymore. Now, Donald Trump is saying dumbass shit about how they want to move the Palestinians out of Gaza, and he's saying that openly. It's very important that everyone understand that Joe Biden was trying to do that behind the scenes. Okay? Nothing has changed. The reason why Gazans have not been pushed out of Gaza is not because the U.S. didn't want to do it or Israel isn't a genocidal ethnic cleansing state. Those have been true the entire time. The reason why it's not happening is because Saudi Arabia and Egypt said, this is our red line. We're not going to allow you to displace 2 million people out of their country. We're not going to allow you to do another Nakba. We do not agree. We do not accept. And the reason for that is manyfold. But the first reason is it may cause a revolt in those countries, right? If 2 million people are desperate refugees who've been genocided, floated to Egypt, and started to like talk to Egyptians about what had happened to them, and Egyptian life was disrupted by 2 million people who are desperately poor, needing help in their midst, it would cause an absolute social and political crisis that would destroy these countries. Like, there's just no way to do it. Like, it's an insane thing to even think can happen. And that kind of like lack of what I would call basic common sense was common in both the Republican and Democrat administrations. I think this specific instant where like we're talking about like, Trump said he wanted to build Trump Towers and it would be the Riviera of the Middle East. He's saying the stuff that Joe Biden says, but behind closed doors. That's the only difference. And like for a lot of people, and liberals in particular, that difference has meaning for some reason. And the reason why, like for me, if you're socialists, we don't think there's a difference. If you're pushing for something behind closed doors or you're pushing for something openly, that's functionally the same thing. If anything, saying it openly is more honest. And a lot of people like Ethan Klein, they prefer their pretty little lies because they know what they support, right? Like Ethan Klein is not confused about what Israel is. Ethan Klein is not confused about settler colonialism or apartheid or ethnic cleansing or racial hierarchy. Ethan Klein just thinks there's very good reasons for it. Ethan Klein thinks that Arabs can't be trusted as equal citizens in Israel. That's what he believes. And so that is fundamental. And you could tell that by the fact that he's opposed to a one-state solution. Now, when he's opposed to a one-state solution, he's not really brave enough to say what he really thinks. He'll say stuff like, well, if you go to the terrorist city, you'll get lynched. If an Israeli soldier or an Israeli drives into the occupied West Bank into a city, makes a wrong turn, they'll be lynched. And I think what he's trying to say is that if Palestinians were given equal rights and treated as equal citizens in the entire Palestine from the river to the sea, that they would be lynching Israelis everywhere. That's what he's trying to say. And this is not a thing, right? This is not a thing. It's not going to happen. Like, what would happen is, quite frankly, very little in the way of revenge or retaliation would even take place. That's exactly what we saw at apartheid. When apartheid fell, there was almost no revenge, almost no violence. People just were excited to live free and equal, and they didn't want to be fixated on the past. Ta-Nehisi Coates had a very good clip on this, and this is the issue. God, I had it with me, but I don't have it. Oh shit, I don't have it. This is a really, really good point. If anybody could find it for me. He talked about good reasons for segregation. Fuck. This is it. Thank you so much, Chatter. This is Ethan Klein. This is who Ta-Nehisi Coates is talking to Ethan Klein with this clip. And this is fundamentally the situation we're in.
I think some people think there are reasons to practice apartheid.
Yeah.
I think they think there are good reasons.
Right.
I think some people think there are good reasons to, drop bombs on hospitals.
Yeah.
This is clarifying for me.
Right.
Because I understand now that you and I are not in dialogue. And we're not in dialogue because there were people who felt there were good reasons to practice slavery.
Yeah.
Good reasons to practice segregation. And you would be among those people.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's no longer a conversation, which is good. You know what I mean? Like it actually has really, really focused me on what my purpose is and what, what I can write. But I think, man, honestly, it's not even so much that people can't, for me, like grapple with the book. The reality is just indefensible. There's just no argument.
Right.
I think some people think there are reasons to practice.
Now, no offense, since I'm only here for entertainment and you're the boss, but perhaps we should stop giving Ethan the attention, bro. My feeling on this is I will never, ever, ever, ever allow people to just attack us and then not respond ever. I'm going to say what I want to say, but you have to understand something, Chad. I am talking about Ethan Klein as representative of his type of liberal justifier of apartheid. And that's what he is. All right. Now, Ethan Klein says he donated $6,500 to charity. Therefore, you shouldn't criticize him as being supportive of Yoav Gallant. But then he immediately supports Yoav Gallant. Have you seen Kanye's tweets? No. Mike would have no show if he didn't rant about Ethan and Destiny 6 hours a day? What? What? We literally are talking about liberalism. What? This is what's crazy. You have a channel with 14 million subscribers doing slander against me and my friends, trying to destroy our platform, and your response is to ignore that. If somebody pointed a gun at your head, would you just ignore it? Like, what are you talking about? And we're directly dealing with Ethan. We're directly dealing with Ethan. Ethan thinks there's good reasons that Israel doesn't give Palestinian, that there isn't one state. Ethan thinks there's good reasons. Ethan's reasons are the Israelis don't want to live in a state with Arabs where they're equal in rights and equal in population. They don't want to live in a state. He thinks that's a good reason. He says if a majority of Israelis don't want to give rights to Palestinians, their virtues need to be respected. That's exactly what white people in the South thought when slavery was existing. They said the majority of white people don't want to give black people rights, so black people don't get rights. That's exactly what they said. Exactly, word for word. It's not even an analogy. It's in a direct copy of the same arguments. White racists in South Africa, where they were upholding apartheid, said the same thing. The majority of white people in South Africa don't want black people to have rights, the same rights. They don't want black people to have the right to mix with white people. And that means it's democratically endorsed. You know who didn't get a vote? Black people. Worst part is he's dragging everyone down with him. Pummeling Subcount is putting his crew at risk of being out of work. His wife losing sponsorships is because of his tantrum, not Hassan. And apparently Teddy Fresh is also drowning. They have had to lay off people around Christmas, and now he's putting the employees left at risk. He doesn't see this because he's selfish and would gladly sacrifice everyone for his own goals. I actually don't consider that to be the worst part. I actually consider that to be pretty fair. It's like, I'll give you an analogy. It's like saying the cloth traders in the North who sell cotton are being dragged down by the Confederacy. Good. You know, you might not have directly enslaved and helped do the evil, but you supported the evil, you profited from the evil, and now you're losing out because of it. It's the consequences of not having morals. It's a consequence of only caring about your bag. When you tell the world the only thing you care about is money, you know what people who don't care about money are going to do? Try to take your money away. That's the reality. And it's like the advertising strategy. Ethan Klein wants to attack Twitch's advertisers, that I just simply don't run ads on my channel. Now what? To Ethan Klein, he wouldn't create a single piece of content if he wasn't getting paid. So for him, the idea that I would just go, okay, I'll be user supported then. I'd rather not have the US military and Chevron running ads on my channel. And next, the H3 crew always speak up when it's easy. They don't say a thing when it matters. Well, I mean, there's an old saying, which is, you can't convince a man to see what he's paid not to see. Or you can't make a man believe something that he's paid not to believe. It's like, do you think you could go to an oil company lawyer or lobbyist and prove that that company is evil? No, they don't give a shit. Their job is to make up arguments for why they're not evil. And this is ultimately, this is the essence of what makes my show better. Ethan Klein will fixate on me as a person. I have not talked about Ethan as a person literally much at all, other than what he says and what he believes. I haven't gone back and dug up the fucking N-word compilation. I haven't showed him in blackface. You know, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. I don't need to see him, you know, lovey-dovey with various alt-right people. Like, I don't actually need to do that. I could just talk about what he believes and what he thinks. And that brings us to this open letter that was sent to me tonight or last night. And it's called An Open Letter to Liberalism. And I think this is actually a really, 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 there's no way you'd skirt ads if you only had 1K subs and a few hundred viewers. I literally didn't run ads when that was exactly true. I only started running ads when I could actually make money off of it, like real money. When I had a few hundred viewers, I didn't run ads. Like, The only time I ever ran ads was when I was like being hate rated by Destiny. They get like $50 off of it or something. You know what I mean? Like no, that's not true. The only time I started running ads is basically when Twitch made it mandatory. And then I ran 4 minutes of ads an hour, which is like considered to be very low. I would rather, like yesterday we had 500 subs. You know, in a typical day, you know, we get at least 100, probably closer to 200, you know, and then there's some days where we get like, you know, a few times a month, we get a crazy amount. I'm very happy with that. I'm happy with the fact that we have like 4,000 individual people who pay for their own sub, and that we have like probably 150 people that routinely give more than one sub to the community. We have a very, very deep base of very generous supporters, mostly people paying for their own shit. That's like the majority of the money in my community is a person paying for their own thing. That's crazy. So anyway, this is why this open letter to liberalism is really, I think this is like an open letter to Ethan Klein. That's the reality. Knock, thank you for the 20 tier 1s, and Control Salt Escape, thank you for the 2. Algorithm, hey, how you doing, buddy? Welcome back. So let's go in. Let's read this article because I think it's actually a really clarifying thing. Zazman, thank you. Black Gusuku, thank you both. Cosmos84, appreciate you all. The Sad Deku Tree wants you guys to give him a sub. Have I sent Hassan the narcissistic smear? Honestly, I should. That's a good point. Like, narcissistic smear campaigns are legitimately annoying. It's one of the reasons why I know I'm not like narcissistic personality disorder, because I don't do it, because I just don't care. I think I'm closer, like if I had to diagnose myself, it would be not narcissism. Like legitimately no. I think it's more like, I don't know what I have. I don't know. I'm sure I've got something. We've all got something. Megalomania? Nah. I don't think I'm that important. I don't think I'm that important fundamentally. I think I'm right about shit. I think I'm more, I think my takes are better than like what the Democratic Party's takes are. You're autistic and from the East Coast, so you're kind of an asshole. Very true, honestly. I think when we talk about autism online, we use it in a broader sense than it would actually be used medically. Like, I don't think that like Hassan or I would ever be diagnosed as autistic, except in the most loosey-goosey California therapist. You know what I mean? Like, we might have autistic traits, but I don't think we're like autistic in the sense that people use it. You know what I mean? And I do think that the spectrum makes a lot of sense. It's like, imagine autism spectrum as a spectrum of visible light. I think Hassan and I are like infrared or like, you know, UV. We're outside of the like technical spectrum of being autistic, but like we're pretty close. You know, we're pretty close. You're getting more autistic by the minute. Yeah, this analogy is not helping me. White South Africans fled from South Africa after Nelson Mandela got elected because they thought black people were so inherently violent that they would do violence to the streets to random whites. It was purely projection. So I hear it when Ethan talks about Palestinians too. Like, they're inclined to violence, so there needs to be apartheid. I mean, a lot of white South Africans didn't flee. They only diagnose it if it affects your boss's ability to exploit your labor. That's something that I've been attacked for by Brianna Wu, actually. I was talking about the way therapy under capitalism works, which is a very interesting thing, which is like a lot of therapists approach therapy like trying to get a permanent money supply from their, you know what I mean? It's not goals based, right? Oh, you should just have therapy. Like you have a dentist or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, it's just somebody you're paying a subscription fee to. It's like, no, I think therapy should be goals based. I think it should be about building your skills. I don't think it should just be a person that, you know, a professional friend that you're forced to pay money to. Like, no, it should be based around specific structures and goals and skills and coping mechanisms and things like that. Did you hit the political check mark to not have to run any ads? I hit the political check mark so that I don't get in trouble for not hitting the political check mark. But I also decided not to run ads, period, because ads are the thing that hurt your new viewer retention the most. So, you know, yeah, am I losing out on like $4,000 or $5,000 minimum a month? Yeah. But ultimately, if it doubles the size of my stream, I'm going to make more money in the long run. And which has pretty much happened. Like if we look at like this is one of the funniest things. Ever since the attack on Twitch advertisers happened, hey Frost Prime, how you doing by the way? My audience has actually just continued to grow like exponentially because like they took away our ads, right? Like I want to say it was like, when was it, chat? October or September? I'd have to go back and look. It was somewhere around there. And I was just like, all right, cool, I'm not gonna run ads. And then it was like, well, you can put this tag on. And I was like, nah, I'm just gonna keep them off. You know, November was like my best month, and then until, you know, just like, okay, I'm just gonna keep them off. To be fair, here in Cali, that's how our therapy system works through the state. Everything, they actually want you to progress and move beyond therapy. If you are progressing, they'll help you get there. But if you progress, they actually want to move you out of therapy. It's not a long-term thing here. They want to see self-improvement. Yeah, that's the way I like it. I think therapy is really good, but there's a book called, I think it's like, there's been 200 years of psychotherapy and everything's getting worse. And I'm not blaming therapy for everything getting worse. I'm just saying that therapy, as it is structured now under capitalism, the goal is to make you a productive member of society, right? Like you'll never get committed if you're showing up to work and performing your duties and keeping your boss happy, right? Like you only get in trouble when you stop paying your rent, you stop showing up to work, you know, you stop making some money. It doesn't matter about what you are psychologically or subjectively feeling. Like if you're going to work, but you're you're doing your work, but internally you're just racked with anxiety and angst and psychological torment, they'll just be like, you're fine, you're high functioning. Every morning I experience a blinding, searing hatred for liberals. How do I cope? Oh my Lord in heaven. Ajax just gifted 100 sub. Ajax has gifted 100 fucking subscribers. Holy moly. That's crazy. So anyway, let's read this open letter to liberals like Ethan Klein, and we'll continue. Mike, I largely agree with your assessment of therapy, but my only pushback would be that a therapist is sometimes a really strong reminder of what we've dropped, the tools they've taught us. This is especially true with people with chronic depression. My therapist has never tried to train me to get back to work, but to learn how to better cope with the undulations in my nervous system while trying to exist in capitalism. That's a good therapist. I don't want you to think that I'm saying that all therapy is just like, you know, turning the screws of the worker bee. There are good therapists that are ethical and intelligent and have the same critique I'm talking about, you know, who are focused on the person rather than donated 100 subs. So anyway, yeah, Ajax is amazing. What do you want me to do? Make this an Ajax stream? I think Ajax wants me to thank them and keep going. Like, you can just keep posting that all day. Just keep raising my metrics. Anyway, an open letter to liberals like Ethan Klein from a socialist trying to clear things up. Dear liberals, you may have noticed that I spent a lot of time criticizing you. Any chance that you and Hassan will do a stream together? We stream together pretty frequently. I try to go on Hassan's stream for something that has a purpose. I was on his stream twice during the elections. We'll probably go on in a few months. I just have to, I feel like when you go on other people's streams, you should just try to occupy space. You should try to provide value. Don't put people's numbers into the chat. What are you doing, man? This is because I am socialist. And although I'm sure you have all kinds of preconceptions about what that means, I assure you, socialists have always criticized liberals, and we have good reasons for doing it. In this article, I'd like to lay some of them out. I don't expect you to agree with me about any of them, but I do hope we can at least arrive at a more accurate understanding of where the points of disagreement actually are. Because we don't have free healthcare, your insurance provider will recommend the most basic and available person to you when mental health is very specialized. You need someone who's familiar with whatever you are really going through, and you can demand that those people are found for you. Use your power. Oh, so true. Off topic and something this community already knows, but here is confirmation that by an ex-IDF confirming the use of the Hannibal Directive. Yeah, we've known about that for a long time. Carl, what is a liberal? The most important thing to understand about socialist criticism of liberals is that we are not using the word in the way that you probably do. In the contemporary United States, liberalism is usually used to mean something like the ideology of the Democratic Party. But historically, and in most of the world to this very day, liberal means something quite different. Put simply, liberalism is capitalism's spin on the Enlightenment. It takes all kinds of values and beliefs that have been extremely widespread since the 17th century, freedom, rationalism, egalitarianism, and it interprets them in ways that defend and are compatible with capitalism system of private property. To see what I mean by this, consider healthcare. In the Marxist tradition, freedom comes from having all of your basic needs met so you can choose what kind of life you want to live. For this reason, we consider healthcare a right that we have a collective responsibility to ensure for each other. But under liberalism, freedom is expressed in the ability to choose whether or not to have healthcare and to choose not to help someone else get healthcare. This means that it is commodified into a product in the free market that you could choose to purchase or not, but that no one has to provide for you. This is very, 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 very clear and very, very important to understand the difference between someone like Ethan Klein and myself. Now, Ethan Klein, I could hear him objecting to this and go like, no, I'm a social democrat. I think you should have health care. All right. Ethan Klein might say, no, I think healthcare should be a collective responsibility of society and we should provide it. Well, my first question would be, does that include Palestinians? Do you want to provide free healthcare for Palestinians? Let's assume that he says yes, which is not a safe assumption, but just for the sake of being nice, he'll say yes. All right. How do we achieve that? And this is why somebody calling themselves a social democrat who lacks any understanding of how social democratic politics came to be, they should be quiet. That's why Ethan Klein calling himself a social democrat is completely meaningless, because he doesn't know where social democratic policies came from. I'm going to give you a hint. Marxist social democrats, all right? Marxist socialists. They're the ones who came up with the whole social democracy he loves so much. It wasn't people like Ethan Klein, rich white people living in Beverly Hills. It was socialists. Socialists won power in elections, and one of the policies they pursued was universal social programs like health insurance or health care for all. And they provided it through government provision, collective provision. That wasn't done by some liberal going, we need to help I just think it makes sense and it's moral. No, what happened is unions got together, leftists got together, they built political parties, they attacked capitalists, they ran electoral campaigns, and they won. But because they were powerful enough to physically take the streets, they were allowed to take power and gain those concessions. That's what happened. It wasn't like some rich liberal like Ethan Klein going, I think we should give the healthcare to the people because that's nice. It was socialists that got that. So if you look at the Nordic states and you're like, I like how they have this, and this program. Who the fuck do you think got it? Who do you fucking think got it, you dumbass? Do you think it was people like you, Ethan, millionaires in their fucking Beverly Hills mansions? Or was it socialists and trade unionists like myself and Hassan? You dumb rat fuck. Like that's the thing that makes this so embarrassing. Is Ethan Klein talks about how he's a social democrat, but he's too lazy even to complete reading the Wikipedia page on it. We love Will Neff, don't we, folks? Ethan, you're a fucking idiot. Or consider egalitarianism. Oh no, if you call someone a rat and they're Jewish, it's always, they called me all sorts of shit, including a rat. So I think it's turnabout is fair play. Also, give me a fucking break. In the Marxist tradition, equality means that everyone should be free from economic exploitation. For this reason, we argue for a system where everyone is a worker who exercises control over the means of production. But under liberalism, equality does not apply to economic exploitation. Some people are free from it, the capitalists who control the means of production, while most people are not, workers who have to sell their labor to capitalists to survive. It's very important when we talk about this in the place of like Ethan Klein's Very Bone podcast, right? Like, who are the people that are constantly being told to shut up? Who are the people that are constantly having what they believe laughed at? It would be the workers of Ethan Klein, you know? They're the people that have to shut up. They're the people that have to kowtow. They're the people that have to be yes men, because Ethan Klein is the capitalist in that situation. And that's why he loves it. That's why Ethan Klein calls himself a capitalist, because he gives him interpersonal power with the people around him. Because he's rich, he gets to tell them to be quiet. When he lauds the attacks on Lebanon, he loves the fact that he has threats over other crew members' heads so he could tell them to be quiet. That's why he likes it. That's why he calls himself a social democrat, because he likes that interpersonal power where he gets to tell his yes men and yes women to be quiet or else he'll fire them. And what does he mean by that? When he says or else he'll fire them, what is the implicit threat? The implicit threat is they're going to lose their home. They're not going to be able to afford their car. They're not going to be able to afford to live. So every time one of his crew members wants to stand up to Ethan, they're balancing the risk that they won't be able to afford to go to the doctor if they get sick. And that's why so many of them have failed the test, right? That's why so many of them have failed the test. And that's what Ethan Klein loves. Ethan Klein hates the fact that he can't intimidate me, right? He hates the fact that he can't make me or Hassan shut up about Palestine, right? Ethan Klein thought, oh, I have a project with Hassan and it makes him a lot of money called Leftovers. I'll threaten to blow that money sink. I'll threaten to blow that up if he doesn't shut up about Palestine. And guess what Hassan said? He said, okay, bye. And that's what Ethan Klein is molding over. That's why he hates socialism so much. He hates the fact that Hassan valued his right to say that what's going on in Israel is a war crime over money. And that's why he's so fixated on it. Like, a lot of people are going, they're laughing and going like, oh, this is Red Scare. But you have to understand, this is really Ethan Klein, a capitalist, screaming his lungs off that a worker is not listening to him. A worker is not listening to him. Why do you think he's running to the capitalist advertisers? Why do you think he's trying to go after, the CEO of Twitch? He thought he would run to the CEO of Twitch and then fellow capitalists would be like, I'll bring this worker in line. But he didn't do that. And so to Ethan and to Destiny and to liberals, the fact that a company isn't serving their capitalist class interest in the moment in an interpersonal dispute means that he has to escalate. It's a capitalist not being allowed to control the situation because of their money and crashing out over it. This is not considered a tolerable form of inequality by Marxists, but it is a tolerable for liberals. And that's exactly the point. Ethan Klein wants to live in a world where because he's rich, he could tell you to shut up and you have to listen. I could go on, but you get the idea. It is true that liberals and socialists are both committed to Enlightenment values as we understand them. Sometimes we understand them in the same way. For example, liberals and socialists both oppose inequalities of race, gender, and so on. But just so often, as in the case above, we understand the legacy of the Enlightenment quite differently. By the way, this is incredibly generous by Carl, and I don't agree, but it's fine. We'll continue. I don't think liberals see race, gender, or things like that in the same way we do. I actually don't think they see them in the same way we do. We'll leave that aside because he's being generous. And for the purpose of comedy, COMITY, if you're from Ethan Klein's channel, not comedy, the thing that Ethan Klein can't do, comedy. By this definition, one can see that liberalism is the ideology of Democrats, but it is also the ideology of libertarians, some Greens, and even some Republicans. No, it's most Republicans. It is the dominant ideology of our time, one that reigns in just about any country with a capitalist economic system, excluding some that are arguably autocratic. Socialists oppose this ideology because we oppose capitalism. Wouldn't Ethan be petit bourgeois? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He is, I mean, like, first of all, just because he engages in some tasks of the show, like sitting there and coughing and turning yellower every stream, doesn't mean that he is not exploiting the labor of everyone around him, right? They are alienated from their labor, right? They get paid a wage. Anti-capitalism is non-negotiable. That last point has to be grasped in all its implications to really understand the opposition between socialists and liberals. It is true, as noted, that liberals and socialists share many of the same values and beliefs. We also share values and beliefs that other ideological groups like reactionaries and fascists do not. For this reason, we may occasionally find common cause or engage in alliances of convenience. But ultimately, liberalism is our enemy because capitalism is our enemy. We view capitalism as a system of oppression that is just as destructive and unacceptable as other forms of oppression like homophobia and nationalism. In a real sense, it is even more harmful than other forms of oppression because whereas they typically only oppress minorities, capitalism oppresses the majority. Almost everyone in the world is a worker. Almost everyone in the world is having their labor exploited for profit by the ruling class. They deserve emancipation. If Twitch deplatformed you or Hassan for any reason, we would figure out a way to keep your shows going. Oh yeah, I know. But every time you're deplatformed, some people are going to fall off because they can't find you again. You know, that's just the way it works. That's why people do deplatforming, because it does damage the fundamental underlying work. You know, I've spent 6 years building this channel up. You know, if I had to start a new channel, it would be damaging. This position, in my experience, seems to be the most difficult for liberals to appreciate. So let me spell it out even more explicitly. Socialists do not consider capitalism to be some secondary form of oppression that is less problematic or consequential than those forms of oppression that liberalism fight. We do not think of a fight against it as something that should be put off or delayed to deal with other problems first. Anti-capitalism is a cause that is just as urgent for us as any of the causes that liberals prioritize. Progressivism is still capitalism. And this is kind of like a very important point to make. This is Ethan Klein. All right. Ethan Klein is, I call this faux progressivism or fraudulent progressivism, which is just like, oh yeah, I say I like all the things that you like that are very popular, but I don't actually have a politics that could achieve it. Like, do you guys think we were going to get Medicare for all because a bunch of people say we should get Medicare for all online? Do you think that's how it works? You need to have an outside of the electoral system power, because capitalists do, and they'll use it. Capitalists use the power they have outside of the system of elections to go after people. So we need to build power outside the electoral system to go after them. Greta Thunberg is a perfect example of the transformation from liberal values to anti-capitalist values. The reason why Greta Thunberg has become an anti-capitalist is because she just simply analyzed the world around her and she realized, oh, the reason why this bad thing is happening goes back to making money. The reason why this bad thing is happening is because it's making money. And she just continued to draw the lines of connection back. And she realized, oh, it all comes back to the interests of the capitalist class. Whether it's imperialism, whether it's climate change, whether it is racism, all these things come back to making money for the elites. And once you figure that out, you go, oh, overturning this system is the same fight. You can't just fight for climate change. Another point of frequent confusion often emerges around the fact that some forms of capitalism are plainly better for workers than others. A capitalism that features a generous welfare state, for example, is obviously preferable to one characterized by austerity. The liberal is often tempted to ask, should socialists accept progressive economics as a kind of compromise position or as a step toward their goals? This reasoning is understandable, but it misapprehends how socialists think about economics. Capitalism, in our view, is a system of private property that creates all kinds of serious social and economic problems. Progressive capitalism could treat some of those symptoms, but it doesn't treat the underlying problem, which is the institution of private property. And that's why progressive economics always finds itself playing an endless game of whack-a-mole with capitalism. As soon as it solves one problem, another pops up. The other thing is, you can't, this is, and I think Carl is missing a very important argument, so I'm going to put it in here, which is, you don't get these concessions by doing liberalism. Like, you don't get the generous welfare state by aiming for the general welfare state. You have a capitalist, trade unionist politics, and they win power and they win demands on the path to even more demands, right? And that welfare state is what happens when they lose momentum. It's a oh, we were doing a bunch of stuff and then politically the capitalists were able to overturn us. That is the reality. And it's true of Sweden, it's true of Norway, it's true of all those social democracies. Is socialist and social democratic parties with Marxist cores were stopped. That is the reality.
They say.
I interrupt, but did you see Hila Klein saying she's a model Jewish person and progressive for leaving Israel? And then Ethan goes on to say Hutch is he tried to say Loderbox was a great political commentator. Like, come on. Like, what could he even say? We think that progressive capitalism is going to be caught in this stalemate with capitalism forever unless something is done about the private property system. And that stalemate is ultimately terrible for workers. The other thing is it's patchwork, right? I love that Sweden has universal pre-K, right? And childcare that costs no more than $200 a month. But does there universal childcare for children in Congo? I love that Sweden provides high quality public health care. Is there high quality public health care in Bolivia? Ethan found out about Loderbox because Hassan reacted to Badapadada's video of Loderbox defending children being shot in the head. After that, he brought him on the show. I mean, that says everything you need to know. It's only available in your chat. That's a little bit mean. That's even mean for me. You just say, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the solution that socialists propose is nationalizing private property. That is our agenda. So any compromise with that agenda will simply not be something that helps the workers for now. It'll be a compromise with our goal of nationalization. Again, let's return to healthcare. In 2016 and 2020, the campaign of Bernie Sanders got extraordinary support from socialists in the United States, even though realistically, he was never going to overthrow the capitalist system. Why did socialists support this? Because Bernie Sanders did propose a meaningful compromise with us, nationalizing some industries, in particular the health insurance industry. That is a real compromise with our position, and that is why socialists generally found him acceptable. Contrast that with the candidacy of Elizabeth Warren. Like Sanders, she was never likely to overthrow the capitalist system, but unlike Sanders, her intention to nationalize the health insurance industry was dubious at best. She designed her healthcare plan in such a way that this would be the last step and the one that was optional, which socialists interpreted as her leaving herself an exit ramp. So we did not consider this a meaningful compromise and did not generally support her. If Democrats understood this basic principle and were willing to work with it, they would find socialists much more cooperative than we are now. It isn't enough to propose some piece of legislation that helps workers, but leaves the capitalist system in place. If you really want to make progress toward socialism, you have to make progress toward nationalization. The limits of cooperation. And this is the kind of point that I'm at now, right? Which is the Democrat, and this is another important point to stop for a second. Look at California. California is what it looks like when the Democratic Party that we have today has total control. Is California of today well run? Does California of today have high quality available housing? Does it have strong unions? Does it have a clean environment? Does it have renewable energy as like, you know, what's the progress on each of these steps? Is there low income inequality? How is homelessness doing? How's public transit? How's congestion on the streets? How's gun violence? All of those problems are just as fucking term. Oh God, this is some old Mike. Sorry. She just gave Donald Trump a blank fucking check. She raised the debt ceiling so much that it will not apply for the rest of his fucking term after he just cut corporate taxes and taxes on the rich by $2 trillion. Now she's turning around and telling Bernie and Warren we can't increase the debt, but she just said to Trump, increase the debt as much as you fucking want. That is who she is. Who's our actual enemy, guys? Who's our actual enemy? Who's our actual enemy? I want to ask you that question. Who is her actual fucking enemy? Beautiful. That was my original setup chat, which I'm sorry. Right here, you have my iPhone earbuds wired and my laptop integrated webcam, which honestly, I got a webcam like a few weeks after this, and it's the same webcam I'm using now. It's a $50 webcam. As you can see, it's not doing too hot right now. Hold on. It's struggling. The webcam is struggling right now. How are we doing, webcam? Here, let me see if we could help you. I'll restart you. Okay, I think it's okay. That helped. Are the OG chatters still here? Some of them, without a doubt. Some of them. Mike, this setup isn't something you should be proud of. Use Vio's new camera. I couldn't agree more. Ultimately, unfortunately, there's little evidence that most Democrats are willing to work toward nationalization. On the contrary, particularly since the Carter administration, the Democratic agenda has been the third way agenda of moderate privatization. This means that Democrats are not just useless for socialists, they are actively working against our core agenda. This presents us with a serious problem, particularly in the long term. Whenever an election approaches, liberals make a compelling case that socialists should set aside their core agenda and vote for Democrats for the sake of advancing the parts of our agenda that we share and keeping right-wing radicals out of office. In the short term, this logic makes a certain amount of sense. In the long term, however, voting for capitalist Democrats at every election means that we will never be able to advance our agenda. So what do we do about this? One approach is to pressure Democrats to compromise with the socialists through the usual modes of citizen activism, particularly through criticism and praise if they actually comply. Criticism could also serve the cause of legitimizing third-party challengers who might be willing to advance our cause. Another approach is to try to run socialists to the Democratic ticket. This is difficult, primarily because some of our main constituencies, working class and disaffected voters, are wildly underrepresented in Democratic primaries. The Democratic Party is also staffed entirely by capitalists who have on occasion in the past leveraged their positions to stop socialist candidates. This is objectively reality. And this is what I call the Sam Cedar strategy of permanent defeat. And like, I get it. Like, I love Sam, and I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but I think that he loses the forest for the trees. And it's like, he didn't want Donald Trump to win re-election. Well, he did. And the reason why Donald Trump won re-election is because the Democratic Party is hated by working class people. It's now at like a 35% approval rating for the Democratic Party. Donald Trump is significantly more popular than the Democratic Party brand. What are we doing? What the hell is happening at the moment? We're talking about the difference between liberalism and socialism. This is like the core reason this stream exists. And I'm using it to talk about the positions of very specific people to make it crystal clear. And if you, I mean, like, look at what oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, fuck. I thought I had it. Hold on. Maybe it's in my likes. I liked something and then I closed it and I lost it. Fuck. It was a new poll of labor and it showed about 15% approval rating. Is he rehiring the DOGE racist? Who gives a fuck? I can't find it, chat. Apparently I didn't. Apparently I had it open. It's like on an old window. Who knows? Oh, thank you, God, you found it. Labor net approval plunges to -50. Approve 15%. Disapprove 65%. A third approach is to make our vote for Democrats contingent on them offering a meaningful compromise on the socialist agenda. In order to do this credibly, however, you have to be willing to withhold their vote if they refuse to play ball, which is what I was trying to do. By the way, this was my approach with Kamala Harris, and this is what I was attacked for, which is state openly what I want, say if she meets me here, I'll fight for her. If she doesn't, I won't. And she didn't, so I didn't. And people think that this is like me betraying them for some reason, like they're entitled to my support. They're not. Can we get a single Democrat who isn't a pussy?
He's not a federal employee. He's not a federal employee.
If somebody tries to block my way physically for where I'm entitled to go, I will move them. I mean, it's just the way it goes. And how will I effectuate that? I will continue to walk forward. I will say, hey, I'm going in the door. And I start to push past them. If they try to push me back, then they have assaulted me. That's it. You just keep walking if somebody's trying to block you, and you keep walking. And if they try to push you back, they've assaulted you. If representatives are willing to be arrested for removing this Pinkerton while Elon's groypers are raiding the DOE, then why are they there? Yeah. God, pathetic. Finally, a fourth approach is to try to build a socialist third party, which means campaigning against Democrats between and during elections. I want to do this. The launching of a third party in the United States is extraordinarily difficult for systemic reasons that everyone is familiar with. The only way this is plausible is we have to walk the same path that successful third parties have always walked. Bernie Sanders has to quit the Democrats and start his own party and start running campaigns and start running candidates. That's it. And he's probably going to lose a lot, but that's it. Unless there are people like AOC quitting the Democratic Party, it's not going to happen. The objective reality is there was no path to victory for Harris without a weapons embargo. Everyone who conditioned their vote on an embargo did more to get Harris elected than Dem supporters. In fact, that's correct. As you know, socialists try all four of these approaches. What else is there? Certainly Democrats should be able to understand why do nothing and just accept capitalism forever isn't an option that socialists are realistically going to go along with. We do have something to try to end capitalism, and that is naturally is always going to be against the interests of a party that overwhelmingly supports capitalism. There is no way socialists can be socialists and also be compliant with this Democratic Party. So where does that leave us? At first glance, it seems like Democrats and socialists are at an impasse. Democrats want our vote, but we want socialism, and it is rare that both objectives are even potentially compatible. Unfortunately, there is really no clever way around this conflict. We are just two opposing political factions that want different things. But I do think there are a few considerations that can make this conflict less heated. First, please remind yourself that a lot of people other than socialists refuse to vote for Democrats. We are never the sole cause of your losses. There are millions upon millions of Americans who just don't vote at all or who vote for third parties. And frankly, a lot of them are much more gettable than we are. So while it may be fun to scapegoat us for your defeats, maybe you should just spend more time thinking about the Democrats who stayed home to watch Netflix, because there are a lot more of them than there are of us. Second, consider there are ways that having a left-like opposition works to your advantage. For example, when Republicans call you Marxist, you can credibly say, no, those guys are Marxist. When you're trying to pass some kind of progressive economic initiative, you could say, look, our plan to expand Medicaid is pretty unambitious and moderate when you put it in perspective. We could be trying to nationalize all of healthcare like the socialists want to, but we aren't. The right understands this very well. Getting ant-flagged pulls the political center of gravity in your direction. That's why they spend little time criticizing the radicals to their right and all of their time punishing left. Third, I know this is hard to believe, but we really do spend a lot of time criticizing Republicans too. In the past month, 10 of my 19 articles were aimed at Republicans, and several of the others were not aimed at Democrats. I often think that there is a selection bias problem going on here, where Democrats only pay attention to socialists while we're criticizing them, and thus think that this is all we ever do. But Republicans remain the most rabid anti-socialists in our country, so I promise you, we have no love for them. Again, I do not expect this post to resolve anything, but I hope that it at least clarifies our differences. We have a real disagreement about what to do with the capitalist system of private property, and we have real disagreement on electoral strategy. Everything else emerges from there. Love and kisses, Carl. Personally, the one thing I would add to this is very few people are actually liberals. Like, we're talking about like 10% or less of people actually support the political agenda of a moderate Democrat. I mean, this is 9 out of 10 people disagree. And that, what's the real amazing thing is that liberals have managed to put themselves at the top of one of the major parties. And the same thing with Republicans. Like, Republican policy is very unpopular. New Trump sanctions on the ICC in retaliation for their Israel investigation just dropped. Yeah, this is pretty standard for both parties, unfortunately. Holy shit, Trump refused to fire the FEC commissioner. She has refused to leave and remains at her post. What a hero. She's the best. I received a letter from POTUS today purporting to remove me as commissioner and chair of the FEC. There's a legal way to replace FEC commissioners. This isn't it. I've been lucky to serve the American people and stir us some good trouble along the way. That's not changing anytime soon. Yeah. If he can't fire you, then don't. If somebody says you're fired, but you're not fired, then don't act fired. What do you want me to say?
Hey, I can't run again.
What a chat.
That's the expression. Sure. Then somebody said, I don't think you can. Oh.
Those were comments Donald Trump made at the National Prayer Breakfast, where he once again floated the idea of staying in power beyond what is allowed by the 22nd Amendment. So to say that he has no regard for the Constitution would be an understatement. He also tried to end birthright citizenship via executive order, which is codified in the 14th Amendment. He is considering sending incarcerated U.S. citizens to El Salvadoran prisons in direct violation of the 8th Amendment. He's sending immigrants to concentration camps as we speak in Gitmo to deprive them of their 5th Amendment rights, which everybody is entitled to, by the way, regardless of citizenship status. His Attorney General, Pam Bondi, is criminally investigating companies that have DEI initiatives, which is a brazen violation of the First Amendment. And he's reportedly drafting an executive order to abolish or dismantle, we don't know how far it's going to go, the Department of Education, which requires an act of Congress. Now, on top of that, he's letting Elon Musk illegally gain access to our government agencies, which now includes the NIH, the Department of Education, and probably more as I record this. He's also gained access to Medicaid and Medicare computers. He is trying to line item veto payments appropriated by Congress at the U.S. Treasury, and that's obviously illegal. But what's crazy, or not so crazy, depending on, what you know about politics, is that Republican senators have willingly ceded that power to Elon Musk despite its illegality. And as this Notice headline put it, Musk's actions may be unconstitutional, but, quote, nobody should bellyache about that, Senator Tom Tillis said. Right. So in other words, this is a constitutional crisis, and nobody's acting like it. But even that doesn't sufficiently describe the danger of this moment, and I think that Jamel Bowie put it best, writing for the New York Times, quote, to describe the current situation in the executive branch as merely a constitutional crisis is to understate the significance of what we're experiencing. Constitutional crisis does not even begin to capture the radicalism of what is unfolding in the federal bureaucracy and of what Congress's decision to not act may liquidate in terms of constitutional meaning. Together, Trump and Musk are trying to rewrite the rules of the American system. They are trying to instantiate an anti-constitutional theory of executive power that would make the president supreme over all other branches of government. If Trump, Musk, and their allies succeed, then the question of American politics won't be if they'll win the next election, but whether the Constitution as we know it is still in effect. And that's what we're contending with right now, in this moment. Donald Trump is in the process of fundamentally transforming our entire system of governance and consolidating power so rapidly that there might not actually be any going back when it's all said and done. We're talking about an informal dictatorship or an explicitly illiberal system of governance, if not.
Denham's video at Ethan Klein drops in 10 minutes. Can we watch it sometime? Liar Feld. Ethan Klein is a weaselly little liar. Yeah, we can watch that. That sounds like fun.
Not de facto regime change altogether. And it doesn't take long to dismantle democratic institutions. In a piece published in The Atlantic by historian Timothy Ryback, he describes how Hitler was able to do it in just 53 days. And the parallels between then and now are truly striking. But we're going to revisit that article in a bit. The point is that it's not too early to start having serious conversations about contingency plans if Trump chooses to go full Hitler. Senator Chris Murphy urged Democrats to act like democracy is weeks away from disintegrating, because it is. And given the speed with which Trump is moving, I'm afraid he could be right. And on a recent episode of Secular Talk, Kyle Kulinski encouraged Democrats to take some pretty extreme steps, admittedly, but they're necessary.
I really hope the Democrats are smart enough right now to be making alliances which might be necessary for the future. And what I mean by that is you got to get the National Guard on your side. You got to get police departments on your side. You got to try to peel away some generals from the Trump administration, because the fact of the matter is, what is stopping these guys? What's stopping Elon and what's stopping Trump from... The courts are going to say, and this isn't a maybe they'll say this, they are definitely going to say, Elon's got to stop. They got to stop. What's to stop them from saying, from Trump to come out and say, no, I disagree. I want to keep going. I'm the president. My word stands. That's beyond a constitutional crisis. That is literally just a fascist coup. That's what that is. Where it's like, hey, you can't do this. This is in brazen, flagrant contravention of the law. And they go, agree to disagree. What do you do then? What do you do then? If you are not making alliances with muscle right now, and all the muscle is on the side of Trump and Elon, then they literally get to do whatever they want. The law is whatever the fuck they say it is at that point. I mean, these are literally the conversations we have to start having.
And I totally agree. With everything that we've already seen, it's not too early to start having that conversation. And I would rather over-prepare than be under-prepared. And the reason why Democrats should prepare for that scenario is because the judiciary, which is still a check on Trump to an extent at least.
No, it's not.
Doesn't have a way to enforce their decisions. So while Congress won't hold him accountable, well, the judiciary might. They don't have a police force, right? They simply interpret the Constitution and they say what is or isn't permissible. So if they say that
not
Trump
totally true, but let's not argue.
Trump can't send U.S. citizens to El Salvador, for example, he can technically just do it anyway, and they'd have no way to enforce.
I will say this, like, the idea that the judiciary is a counter to Trump is just laughably stupid, liberal bullshit. They have 6 radical Republicans on the Supreme Court, 3 of whom helped steal the 2000 election. The court's institutions are not going to stop anything. Also, the Democratic Party is mostly collaborating with Trump. Trump has a higher rate of confirmation of his cabinet appointments than any other president. Like, not only are they helping, not only not resisting Trump, they're not successfully blocking any of his appointments. I mean, he's appointing Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. Like, the guy is squirting eyedroppers of blue dye into his water. Like, do you understand how stupid this shit is?
Their decision. There's no way to stop him, essentially. They can't arrest him, and the Supreme Court already granted him near absolute immunity, so Trump could just threaten to ignore the Constitution and then ignore the Constitution, and absolutely nothing could be done about it. And we're clearly building towards that moment. And Republicans also know that it's getting to that point because they're feeling pressure to let us know that this isn't what it looks like. For example, Senator Mike Lee asked, name a fascist dictator whose agenda entailed limiting the size, cost, and power of government. I can name one. Hitler. The Adolf Hitler. And one of the more popular replies to that by SDL pointed out this excerpt from Jerma Bell, who explained how the Nazis pursued privatization to win over support from big industries and business leaders. In other words, they outsourced public services to private industries. And that is exactly what Trump is doing. In fact, he already won over the business industry, right? I mean, the Broligarchs showed up to his inauguration, the richest people in the world with an estimated net worth of nearly $1 trillion, were sitting shoulder to shoulder at his inauguration. And this notion that Trump is limiting the size of government because of some ideological commitment to anarcho-capitalism or something is bullshit, and Mike Lee knows it's bullshit. Trump is specifically hollowing out the administrative state in order to consolidate his own power and eliminate checks and balances. That's the extent to which he's committed to shrinking government. He wants the government to be so small that he is effectively the government. And he has the first and last say on everything because he is a fascist who aspires to be a dictator. And Mike Lee knows it, which is why he felt like he needed to address that, because it is exactly what it looks like. And it's easy to be alarmed by the most blatant things that he's doing that's driving the constitutional crisis that we're in. But him and his cronies are also making other more subtle changes that are either dubious in their illegality, disastrous, or just straight up Hitlerian, literally. Case in point.
The governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, basically admitted that he knew somebody that didn't have full documentation, that he was hiding over his garage. Then we have Tom Tillis, senator from North Carolina, saying that people should have the right to sue sanctuary cities and states that aid and abet in lawbreaking. Your comment on all of that?
Well, I think the governor's pretty foolish saying what he said, because I got note of it. Won't let it go. We'll look into it. And if he's knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien, that's a violation of Title 8 United States Code 1324. I would seek prosecution, or the secretary would seek prosecution.
Just to be clear, Tom Homan, Donald Trump's border czar, is threatening to prosecute.
By the way, Tom Homan, Obama alum, excuse me.
And arrest a governor for harboring and concealing immigrants. I mean, the Hitler particles are through the roof. This is straight up Nazi shit. And on that note, look at what one of Trump's State Department appointees tweeted back in October. Quote, "Competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work." Yeah. And to make matters worse, Trump is literally in the process of making that a reality right now. He rescinded an executive order signed by Lyndon Johnson in the civil rights era. He recently forced NASA to purge any mention of women in leadership from their websites. So, I mean, he is in the process of making sure white men are the ones in charge, as if they already weren't. Look at the...
One of the funniest things I read, and I did cover the story because I found it really funny, was in the NSA museum. They started putting like sticky notes off of all the like statues and displays showing like women in leadership.
The makeup of Congress. But to be crystal clear, when he says competent white man, it's redundant to them because it's assumed that they're automatically competent due to their whiteness. And just to go back to Pam Bondi's criminal investigation of companies with DEI, Gabrielle Perry put into perspective what that could actually...
NSA museum, listen to this.
The National Cryptologic Museum papered over some history. The Cryptologic Museum, it celebrates the nation's code makers and code breakers from the National Security Agency, which is right next to the museum. And that museum taped sheets of paper over plaques that celebrate women and people of color. NPR's Frank Langfitt reports on what happened next.
News that the museum had covered up the exhibits broke online, angering many NSA retirees. Even after the museum uncovered the plaques, dozens of retirees showed up there Monday just to make sure. And they were mad.
Didn't somebody say, "Oh my God, that's wrong"? Why didn't that happen?
This is Helen Adams. Her late husband, Ralph, was executive director of the NSA, which intercepts foreign conversations and breaks government codes. Ralph Adams was also black. His face was not among those obscured. Still, his wife was incensed and questioned NSA public relations staff.
That says we don't want to see black or brown faces. You're going to cover them up like they don't exist? No.
NSA retiree Rob Johnson was equally appalled.
I worked in this agency for over 51 years. As much as this administration eschews truth and honesty, it is important that we not allow it to erase history.
In a phone call, NSA Executive Director Sheila Thomas, the number 3 person in the agency, told NPR that covering up the exhibits was a mistake.
There was absolutely never an intention to cover up parts of our history.
Thomas said NSA leadership didn't provide enough guidance to staff as they tried to implement President Trump's order terminating diversity, equity, and inclusion in the federal government.
We were not clear and really responsive to potentially any questions that may have been arising because people were they were on rapid fire trying to move very quickly and be responsive.
And why was it such a rush?
Well, as you know, we're getting a lot of executive orders. There's I guess, flood the zone's a fair phrase there. And we are being as responsive as we possibly can. Some of these have short deadlines.
The former NSA workers are glad the museum restored the exhibits, but they're still unsettled by what happened. Larry Pfeiffer spent 20 years at the agency and served as chief of staff at the CIA. He thinks someone covered up the honorees because they were afraid what would happen to them if they didn't. Pfeiffer says it's a sign of the climate of fear right now in Washington.
We have appointees to this administration who have said that they intend to traumatize the federal employee workforce. We have seen people put on administrative leave with the threat that they're going to be fired.
Pfeiffer posted a photo of the papered-over exhibits that helped galvanize his fellow former NSA workers. He says there's a lesson in all of this.
There may be small bites at the apple here that we can all take to push back against this attack on the federal workforce. You don't have to try to take it all on. Maybe you focus on what you're an expert in.
As for Thomas, she requested some grace as her agency works through rapid requests from the new administration. And she encouraged people to come see the museum. Frank Langford, NPR News, Fort Meade, Maryland.
Personally, and I'm going to say something that's going to surprise a lot of people, I'm glad they did that. Because understanding what they are... Oh, damn. Ethan Klein is a Weasley little liar. That's funny. We're going to watch that. Don't worry. We're going to have fun with that. I'm curious to see what happens if they try to privatize USPS. There are already small rumblings of wildcat strikes at arbitration for our contract goes poorly. Who knows, man? It's a glimpse of just how disgusting and racist they are, but it's also undermining the entire NSA, which is a good goal in and of itself. The NSA is a violation of all of our constitutional rights. When you saw fascism coming, did you think it would move as fast as it did? I mean, I've been saying this stuff for a long time. And the reason why fascism won is why. This is why. Boomers just, quite frankly, do not understand the difference in our experiences between millennials and Gen Z and Gen Alpha today and the way that they grew up in the 80s. And this clip explains it.
Boomers give us shit about buying luxuries is because back in the 80s, luxuries were expensive, but life was cheap. Now it's been inverted. Our life is expensive, but our luxuries are cheap. So I think this is where the disconnect's happening.
First of all, they're also not luxuries. They're just incredibly common and necessary parts of life.
For example, in 1980, you could rent a great apartment for $200, but a television would run you $1,000. So if you bought 3 TVs, that would be $3,000.
That's why people breaking into someone's house and stealing a TV was actually worth doing. It was worth doing to go into somebody's house and steal their TV because it was way more expensive than the fucking rent. So if you got a TV, that was a big fucking deal. Now TVs are free. I got like the most expensive TV, some of the most expensive high quality TVs you can get are $3,000. Like the top of the line TVs are $3,000 now. You can get a really solid TV for like a couple $100.
A CD player was $500, a cell phone was $2,000, a personal computer was $2,500, and a microwave was $500. That's $8,500. That is 3.5 years rent on luxuries. And $8,500 was also equivalent to a 20% down payment on a $40,000 home. So it was irresponsible if you didn't budget correctly to buy all these luxuries because it could be holding you back. But today it's flipped. Our biggest luxury is our rent for $2,000. We can now buy 3 televisions for $600. We have a Spotify account, cell phone for $1,000. You can get a computer for $500, a microwave for $200. That's about $2,400 a month. So our luxuries is about 1 month's
rent. You get a microwave for like $100.
Rent, where theirs was 3.5 years rent. And if you want to put this onto a down payment, even if you took the average home of $420,000, let's bring it down to just $320,000. A 20% down payment on that is $64,000. So if you gave up all those luxuries, you would still owe like $61,000. This $2,400 of luxuries wouldn't even cover your closing cost of $10,000 on that home. So the whole thing's been flipped. So I think when they see us with the TVs, the avocado toast, and the cell phone, they think that's the reason we can't move forward. But why we can't move forward is because housing, daycare, college, and healthcare is so expensive, but those are our necessities. These luxuries are just fun little things that we have.
By the way, the other thing that I would point out, and this guy's dead right, is that it's not just the boomers don't know how much luxuries are. Boomers knows how much it is. They're buying all the luxuries. You know how the boomers are paying for it? Home equity loans. Boomers are borrowing against the increased value of their home, and they're buying and filling it with all the luxuries, and they're doing all the remodels, and they love it. So as their home prices go up, they profit. So they get all the luxuries too. That's why boomers are so hostile to you talking about this, because if housing gets cheap, boomer balance sheets flip. I'll say that again. If housing gets cheap, boomer balance sheets flip. So they are, as a generation, incentivized to make your life worse. Like, they're not just doing it because, like, oh, they're just stupid and out of touch. They're doing it because it's in their financial interest to keep housing scarce. That's how they make their money. Boomers spat in the faces of their fascist fighting parents, spat in the faces of their children, making their lives worse and giving fascists back to them. Very correct. All right, let's watch Dedham's video. She started a new channel. Very smart.
Get a load of this dumbass. What a stupid fucking dumb bitch. Holy shit. Yeah, that's defamation. Straight up, man. Okay, first of all, she's a fucking bitch. Shame on you. Fuck you. Here's a Hassan Orbiter Denims. You guys might not know who she is because she's mostly irrelevant. This is a disgusting human being. She's a vile fucking piece of shit. And yes, she is a fucking bitch. That's a fucking bitch of a person. She is earning the coveted distinction of being a fucking bitch. I have decreed. Let it be known that Denims is a dumb fucking bitch. What a vile fucking human being.
Hey guys, I think I pissed off Ethan Klein. He hasn't had a lot of nice things to say about me since the incident.
45,000 live viewers, by the way. 45,000 views. She had like 45,000 live viewers.
So yeah, I got around 45,000 viewers covering Ethan Klein's content nuke on Hassan. The video was pretty terrible overall. And I think anyone that wasn't sure before is completely certain now that...
By the way, so Denims watched the full video. And they had like one clip that they were pulling out of context. Or like two clips they were trying to use that she was proven wrong. One was the Ethan Klein, like the Sneeko fan. That Ethan Klein lied and said was like a Hassan fan, which, by the way, is not even a legitimate thing to argue about Hassan. There's all sorts of people in our audience who say and do all sorts of shit. I can't control who clicks the Central Committee stream. I'm not responsible for everything my fans do unless I'm encouraging them to do it. And the reality is the guy isn't even a Hassan fan. So Hassan tried to find someone to say that Hassan is creating some sort of anti-Semitic community. The guy's not a Hassan fan at all. He's a Sneeko fan. And Ethan himself admitted that on his own channel. And the other thing, what was the other thing they tried to say she did? Oh, she denied a rape victim. You know, she said a rape victim was lying. That woman claimed she was never sexually raped or assaulted herself. So she, like, what are you talking about? Ethan is saying somebody was assaulted who wasn't assaulted as far as sexually. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Ethan has become a shell of his former self. I mean, shit, I used to watch this guy in high school.
I didn't.
I wish I could fucking memory zap my face after watching this shit.
Now, this video isn't going to cover the whole manifesto because, well, I already did that on my stream. But I did want to respond to some of the clips of me that I've seen floating around. Before we get to those clips, I wanted to address Ethan and anyone else that might have noticed that I was silent or sometimes needed to control myself to make sure I didn't laugh.
Once again, speechless?
You're my hero, bro.
Nothing to say, girl! Say something. More nothing to say? Coming out. What's funny about that? Nothing to say? No comment?
I can't believe...
No comment! No comment.
Wait. She watched the whole video and he tried to find clips where she was just waiting for a chance to speak? That's amazing.
The problem is that Ethan is lying. It's obvious to anyone that knows anything about the topic before going into the video, and it's also obvious to Ethan. I'm silent trying to control myself because I honestly cannot believe that the Ethan Klein isn't afraid to make such a dishonest video. In each clip, I am holding out in the hopes that he brings it back or explains himself, and each time he never did. He literally just leaves in flat out lies. And if you don't already believe me, let me show you. The first clip is about a Sneeko fan that harassed Ethan Klein. Ethan Klein says in his video that this was because of Hassan. The clip is supposed to be me saying that this is obviously a Sneeko fan and then being dumbstruck when he's proven to be a Hassan fan, but he's not. Ethan is lying. Let's watch the clip from his stream.
45,000 people and nobody's got a problem. Watch this one.
Fuck, bro, you're ugly as shit. You look like a rapist. Bro, look in the fucking... You look like a fucking rapist, Ethan.
Is she horrified by what he said, or she's like, got him?
Feel bad for you.
Okay, can I just say really...
That's creepy shit to do to someone in person. That's what she's reacting to. What the fuck is he talking about?
Quickly, it's very obvious from the way that guy's talking he's a Sneeko fan. Like, that's very clear Sneeko lexicon. Can we just be honest for just 2 seconds?
Let's be honest.
Like,
finally,
be real.
please.
Wallahi, that is not.
Wallahi.
No.
What does that mean?
Wallahi, I swear.
Oh, I swear. Okay. She swears.
That's what AB is there for, translating the Arabic.
Oh my God, bro, I love you. Hassan, can I give you a hug, bro?
I'm so sweaty, bro.
I love you, bro.
I'm so sweaty.
I love you, bro.
Once again,
I have to
speechless?
You're like you're my hero, bro.
Nothing to say, girl!
You're the coolest guy.
Here's the, you just went a whole fucking, you just grandstand on.
By the way, Ethan Klein is lying. That's why his eyes are really wide. He's going like this. Because he's lying the entire time. He knows he's lying. He thinks he's got you tricked. He's doing this like, I'm just a small bean. I'm just a small bean. Oh, I got you. Oh, I'm innocent. He's opening his eyes to show how he's guileless. This is when somebody's lying, they will oftentimes make themselves look like a small little bean. A small little bean could never trick you. You're so smart. Super's delight is another phrase for it.
How he's obviously just must not be a fan of Hassan. And like, how could she sit there so stupid and smug? Oh my God.
Again, Ethan is lying. His proof isn't proof at all. The first time this guy shows up during this stream, it happens 15 minutes earlier when he meets Hassan's crew. Notice he doesn't react when they say they're going to find Hassan.
Right now. What are you guys doing? What kind of content?
We're just streaming. It's live streaming.
Oh, live streaming?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm just like, I'm a content creator too, bro.
Sure.
I do content. That's it. So you're just literally live right now?
Yeah. Yes.
How many viewers?
A couple. A few.
Yeah. Like what, 30?
Probably more than 30.
Really?
I would say more than 30. Yeah.
Dude, guys, my YouTube channel is @datingandmoney. Please subscribe.
If you're a Hassan fan, you know Lalo. Like, he's not a Hassan fan. He doesn't know who these people are at all.
@dating and money. I talk about Palestine
Dating
on
and
there.
money.
Yeah.
Dating and money.
I talk about Palestine on there.
Okay, hell yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to find his son. Okay. Where is this guy? Where'd he go? Yeah.
But yeah, just type in and then dating and money, guys.
So the guy is there because he's trying to get viewers to his Sneeko fan dating and money channel.
Just listen, chat. Do not fucking go to dating and money.
Chat, you better stay here. Do not go to that. We can't afford to lose any more viewers. Hassan has fallen on hard times. You know this.
Now, the clip from Ethan's nuke, which happens 15 minutes later.
Oh my God, bro! I love you, Hassan. Can I give you a hug, bro?
I'm so sweaty, bro.
I love you, bro.
I'm so sweaty.
I love you, bro. I have to interview you. You're my hero, bro. I love you, bro.
This one is pretty ridiculous on its face, so I'll just leave it there. But here are some of the nice things this guy had to say about Hassan and me on his Twitter.
Now, transgenderism is a mental illness. Women give into attention-seeking mental illnesses because women are emotional. And Hassan is a communist queer who says he's free Palestine, but his actions dictate otherwise. It should be illegal for her to say she's a political streamer. Women should talk about politics. They are too emotional to the Jewish ideologic, demonic, mentally ill transsexuals that deracinate our society. Free Sneeko on YouTube. Why is he banned for rules that were changed? Not only that, but he is one of the biggest source of viewership. The man did nothing wrong. We will not stop till our friend is unbanned at YouTube. Facts free at Sneeko. LOL, women should stay out of politics 100. And then there's this, of course, Hassan in the maid outfit in Japan. And Dating and Money says dis N-word at Hassan the Hun a F-slur. This guy is not a Hassan fan. He's very clearly a Sneeko fan. So why did Ethan make this such an important part of his stream? The answer is because he's a liar. Now, some of you, and Ethan's not going to pull this clip up on his stream and deal with these facts. Ethan's a liar, all right? And he's a knowing liar. Some of you are going to say it's because he's incompetent. No, he's a fucking liar. This is why we said, oh, this is Destiny clips. Because even though I think Ethan is this like stupid, I think that if Ethan Klein was putting this into the nuke that he spent weeks and weeks on, he would go back and watch the whole context so he got an understanding of what's happening here. But he knowingly knew that if he just lied in front of his audience, they would believe him because they trust him. This is what you need to understand. You can never trust Ethan Klein. He's a liar. He did this intentionally. It's not a mistake. If it was a mistake, he would have corrected himself already, right? He would have said, you know what? I was wrong about that guy. He's not a Hasan fan, but the rest of the video holds up. He hasn't done that because he's lying. Sort of like, for example, Ethan Klein pulled a clip of me saying like, oh, there's some sort of bots being added to Ethan's subscribers to keep them flat. They were declining by tens of thousands of subscribers a day, and then all of a sudden it went dead flat. And somebody else pointed out that the YouTube API for subscriber count isn't live like it is on Twitch. I was wrong. And so I said, oh, I turned out, and like 5 or 10 minutes later, I looked into it and I said, you know what? You're right. I probably should. And I deleted the post I made saying that he was definitely getting botted because I was corrected. And when I made a mistake in something that I'm not an expert in, the YouTube API, when somebody corrected me, I changed my mind. And I came out and said that was wrong. Because sometimes you get things wrong. I was probably not I was overconfident in that position because I know how Twitch works, okay? I don't know how YouTube works because I'm not a YouTuber. So I thought Twitch was very similar to YouTube in the sense that YouTube would want you to have live subscriber counts. Because I've seen so many of those like live subscriber count, clips and stuff. So I thought there was some sort of legitimacy to it, but it turns out there's not. That was a mistake on my part. It is what it is. But guess what? Ethan Klein subscribers are not going up, which is pretty clearly the point that we were making. You're falling off, bitch.
He had to say about Hasan and me on his Twitter. You know the difference between you and Hasan?
What?
Not Nasrallah. The difference between the difference between you and Hasan Piker?
Yes, what? Please tell me. So insightful.
He never...
I don't deny rape. I don't support terrorists. I don't lie and gaslight and manipulate my audience.
The second clip is about a stream Hasan did reacting to Hasan Nasrallah. The accusation is that Hasan supports Nasrallah, and I made a fool out of myself by saying that that wasn't true, only to be immediately proven wrong. Let's watch. He never said Hasan Nasrallah was a good guy.
Right.
You explicitly said Gallant was a good guy.
Right, exactly, of course. Then you did the legend of the Nazi atrocities.
I don't have an issue with them.
I can't believe I'm calling Nasrallah base. I mean, listen. Listen.
By the way, the chatter, he didn't say that. He was reading a chat. This is an example of Ethan Klein lying to his audience again. In Twitch, it is a common thing for a streamer to read a chat, read what the chatter said, and then respond to it. This is just literally taking advantage of people not understanding Twitch culture to lie about someone. And you know who knows this? Ethan Klein. Again, dishonest.
You have to remember something, okay? A lot of these...
No comment. That's amazing.
What? He was literally explaining why he's not based. He was literally explaining why he doesn't align with Hezbollah. You cut it off.
Here's my comment. Hasan is reading a chat message. Yes, seriously. He goes on to explain that the reason the chatter might find himself agreeing with him is that Nasrallah is well educated.
You have to remember something, okay? A lot of these dudes, you see them in their fucking fits, and you hear about like some of their attitudes about like gay people, for example, and you immediately fucking resort to Orientalist perspectives, not realizing that these motherfuckers are better read than you by a million. You might not agree with his methods, but ultimately, this motherfucker has read a shit ton of books.
Okay, I thought those two clips were fun, but the next clip is a little bit more serious. Before we get into it, a quick palate cleanser. You'll notice when we get to the next clip, Ethan Klein put a banner labeling me as an ex-Destiny orbiter. He's doing this to distract from the fact that he's currently orbiting Destiny.
Hassan and his community is desperate to link me to Destiny, someone who I don't even know. They claim that he ghost wrote my video, that he's my favorite creator.
I wonder why people might think that. For one, Ethan uses Destiny's subreddit as a source for his stream. Here's him doing it in October, and here's him explaining why he got the Frogan section of his video wrong.
Here, it's right here.
Oh, never mind.
It's right here. Right at the top. Frogan Rising Star 2024. Right.
r/Destiny. Vote your favorite 2024 Streamer Awards Rising Star. I voted Forsen r/Destiny. I thought you were supposed to be some sort of intelligent YouTuber. You just pull random shit from Google? No wonder you like Destiny. Oh my god, it makes so much sense. These fucking dumbasses just Google the top result on their opinions and then put it out there as if it's research. This is shocking. I mean, it's not, but wow.
Right here. What even is this post from? Is it even from Destiny subreddit?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's the post.
Yes,
so that's the post. So that is where I found it. And I'll admit that was sloppy.
But really, we could also just ask Destiny. Here's what he had to say on October 22nd, the day after Ethan Klein got caught browsing his subreddit.
I know it wouldn't look good for Ethan to publicly do anything with you, but if you reach out on private at all, well, privately we chat a ton, of course. Why do you think I've been off stream so much the past week? I'm scripting these fucking videos. But publicly, I mean, it's difficult to associate with him because Hassan is just going to accuse me of mind fucking him, basically, right?
If Ethan Klein is willing to lie about all this other stuff, what else is he willing to lie about?
Now, personally, I don't know. I just want to put a pin in here and say, the thing about Destiny is he just lies blatantly all the time because he's a dishonest guy. So maybe he was lying about Ethan. I don't know if Destiny was lying about Ethan or telling the truth about Ethan. All I could go off is the fact that Ethan Klein himself admits to taking evidence from Destiny subreddit. And the stuff they use to attack me is long-standing shit from Destiny's community. It's from the Destiny wiki. They just pulled what they consider to be embarrassing clips from Destiny's community and then spread them. That's all of their research. Do you think they looked me up and looked into my campaign and what I ran on? They watched my debate on PBS and they said, "Wow, Mike from PA, he was a real piece of shit." Do you think they were aware of any of the context of what I believe or even care? It is Mike from PA supports Hassan. Therefore, Mike from PA equals I can attack him personally using any trashing I can find. That's it. They made it seem like Dan and Love did deep research on me. They did not. And by the way, if you want to do deep research on me, why don't you ask me, Dan, you cowardly little bitch? That's what journalists do. They ask the person.
I never fucked Destiny.
Anyways, on to the final clip.
Very good. From Believe All Women to Pixar Didn't Happen. The vast majority of people, if not all, who were raped were murdered on the spot.
Here's the thing, though. We are believing the women who come forward and talk about their sexual abuse or experiences. I'm not going to believe fucking Biden when he tells me that everybody's getting raped. That's insane. Mm-hmm. You realize that that's insane, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Damn Goldstein Alma. The reason why that's insane, in case you want to know, here's an article from The Guardian, British newspaper, saying, "Where is Joe Biden's fury about decapitated Palestinian babies?" Let me see if I can find it. She says there, Joe Biden, one of the most inflammatory examples was the false rumor that 40 decapitated babies were found at Kfar Aza kibbutz after Hamas attack. Hamas, of course, committed atrocities on 7 October, including murdering 38 Israeli children. But the fake news about 40 beheaded babies, which the Israeli government press office has confirmed to Le Monde was not true, was potent and emotive and spread absolutely everywhere, including to and from the White House. Joe Biden repeated these unverified reports, even when his staff urged him not to. He even lied about seeing pictures of these babies. It was Iraq's weapons of mass destruction all over again. It was the Kuwait incubator hoax all over again. It laid the basis for genocide, for politicians to look at pictures of Palestinian children decapitated by U.S. manufactured missiles and just shrug. That's why we can't. And by the way, these are the articles. Here's another source. Biden reportedly ignored staff caution on beheaded Israeli babies. Now, I think there was 2 babies that were killed on October 7th. Or was it 1? It was 1 or 2. I'd have to go back and check. 1 was killed by a stray bullet that went through a safe house door and struck a baby. There was no intentional murder of babies by Hamas on October 7th. 0 direct, like, intentional murders of babies. Children were killed, without a doubt, in the crossfire. But we don't know who killed who with what bullet because Israel has blocked all investigation. Israel has blocked forensic investigation of the crime. They destroyed all these crime scenes and buried, for example, in the music festival, they buried all of the cars and bodies in mass pits as to prevent investigation. Why? Because today it was confessed that they followed the Hannibal Directive, which means that the Israeli police and military kill people that are being kidnapped. They kill people that are being captured. That was today. Here's from the Australia Broadcast Corporation. Israeli forces accused of killing their own citizens under the Hannibal Directive during October 7th chaos. This was fucking I'm sorry, this article's from September, but there was another admission today. This is an older story, but this is so, like, when people talk about who died on October 7th, who killed who, we literally don't know. Now, I'm going to go ahead and assume that Hamas killed a lot of civilians and killed the majority of people on October 7th. You can't just trust Joe Biden to tell the truth about these situations because he's knowingly lied about the beheaded baby shit. And by the way, you don't have to lie about Hamas. Why are you trying to lie about Hamas? The reason why they're trying to lie about Hamas is to justify what Israel is doing to Palestinian civilians. Just tell the truth about what Hamas did.
Was kidnapped from her home on October 7th by Hamas terrorists and was held captive for 51 days. Though only 17 years old,
How did she leave, Ethan? How did she leave custody, Ethan? And the first negotiated ceasefire, which is what I and Hassan and Denims and Frogan and all of us support, a diplomatic result. We just got a whole bunch of new hostages released. How did that happen? Trump negotiated a ceasefire, Ethan. This is not a great source just because they're going to claim, they're going to claim it's a bad source. That's not that I think the source is bad. You just need to get a better source, Joe Bob. We're trying to convince white racists here.
Witnessed the murder of her father and sister on that day and is now speaking out about what she witnessed in Gaza as well in a new documentary by Sheryl Sandberg, Screams Before Silence. In new footage, Agam reveals that sexual assault and rape was a regular component of the life as a hostage in Gaza.
Doesn't matter if fucking rapes happen on October 7th.
Hassan, maybe you would like to call her.
Okay, first of all, Hassan saying... First of all, I think that was a dumb... Let me just say this. I think when Hassan said that was a dumb clip. He literally fed propagandists a clip because he said a sentence that they could snip for 5 seconds and try to characterize it as being something else. What Hassan was saying was he knows that there was probably some sort of like illicit sexual crime. You know, there were tens of thousands of Allied rapes during the liberation of Europe in World War II. That the United States raped all across France and all across Germany. So, and Italy, does that mean that the United States was the bad guys? Or is it when you have a war, which is the collapse of civil authority, and you give life and death power to the hands of 18-year-olds, some of them are going to abuse it. And that kind of crime is expected. It's a sign of collapsing discipline. So it would be shocking if there was no sexual assaults by Hamas in the war zone. It would be shocking because it would be the first army that it never did any sexual assaults or rapes. Now, that said, it doesn't make it okay. Those rapes and those sexual assaults should be punished as crimes, which is what they are. But they were trying to say that Hamas, as an organization, made mass rape of Israelis a policy of terror. And that's just not the case. That is not the case. There is no credible evidence to believe that that was ever a policy of Hamas. And the reason why they're saying it is they want you to dehumanize Palestinians and accept the fact that their civilians being killed is comeuppance that they deserve. It doesn't matter. Like, rapes don't justify genocide. And Palestinian individual committing a rape doesn't mean that their desire of the desire of the Palestinian nation to have a state is therefore invalidated.
Liar. Please, go right ahead.
Doesn't matter if fucking rapes happened on October 7th.
There are dozens of testimonies from witnesses, most of who were in hiding and heard or saw it What's the problem? Fuck.
Okay, so witnesses, so-called witnesses, but not actually people claiming they were sexually assaulted, right? And there's no forensic evidence of it. So you have Israelis who have been proven to be liars. The 40 beheaded baby story is a perfect example, saying they saw something, and then there's no physical forensic evidence, and there's no individuals claiming to be raped. Now, again, that still doesn't mean there were no rapes, but we're not disbelieving victims. If victims come forward, I will listen to their testimony.
Fucking bitch. Did you not hear what they said? You respect women? Why are you calling them liars? How fucking cool is that? Say something.
Israel says still can't find any 7 October rape victims. Prosecutor admits. She admits that Israel has little evidence against any specific individual. Using evidence to link a specific crime to a specific defendant when dealing with dozens of crime scenes where hundreds of suspects were caught and thousands of offenses were committed is almost impossible. There are no organized chains of evidence. There is no one who filmed the videos you would want to present in court. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz falsely claimed that members of Hamas made videos of themselves raping Israelis. Where's the evidence? There's no evidence. Yes confirms that 15 months after the events, Israel has not identified a single victim in which a prosecution can be brought against an alleged perpetrator of a sexual attack. Unfortunately, it would be very difficult to prove these crimes. In the end, we have no complainants, Gez admitted, noting the vast gap between public perceptions and factual reality. So no complainants means nobody says they were raped. It doesn't mean nobody was raped and then murdered. It just means you're saying we're not believing victims, but what victims? Who? What are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? And if somebody was raped and murdered, is there forensic evidence?
This is, oh God. It doesn't matter if rape happened on October 7th. It doesn't change the dynamic for me. Hassan declares before finally admitting that Palestinian resistance is not perfect. A social media influencer openly defends rape and mass murder. Wait, what? What did I say in the 17 seconds before this in this 140p fucking clip that you found, dumbass? I'm saying that it most likely did happen, but that doesn't change the dynamic of the genocide. That's correct. I wonder if I could just can I sue a sitting congressperson? Oh, it's his personal account. I wonder if it's different.
Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can.
You just said you believe victims, but here it's a victim right now, a woman telling you this happened, and you're smiling? How do you disprove firsthand testimony? She goes, I wouldn't believe it unless it was firsthand. Here's a 17-year-old whose family was murdered in front of her, and she was kidnapped for 50 days and continually raped while being in captivity.
She does not claim that. She doesn't claim that at all. That's not true. What? Huh? Okay, well, let's look this up. I mean, maybe there's some evidence that I just haven't encountered. What is her name again? Do you guys know her name? Dennis addresses it? Okay.
You just said you believe victims, but here it's a victim right now, a woman telling you this happened, and you're smiling? How do you disprove firsthand testimony? She goes, I wouldn't believe it unless it was firsthand. Here's a 17-year-old whose family was murdered in front of her, and she was kidnapped for 50 days and continually raped while being in captivity. Nothing to say? Nothing? You're not going to fucking acknowledge what just happened?
I will acknowledge what just happened. This woman who you claimed was continually raped in captivity did not claim to have been raped. In fact, when she was released from captivity, she had this to say.
ואז אחד מהם, הצעיר, עשה איתי הורדת ידיים
ולהביא מגבת,
כי אסור לו לגעת בי.
Because it's forbidden for them to touch us. For them, women are sacred. Women are like queens.
שי מלכה. היו עושים לי שיחות איך לשמור על אגם. הסברנו להם שגם אצלנו לפעמים כן יש שלאדם יכול להיות חבר, או יכולים להיות לה כמה חברים לפני שהיא תתחתן. אני אפילו מעודדת את זה, שהיא תתנסה, שהיא תכיר, לפני שהיא אצלה מוסד הנישואים. אבל היינו מתאמתים על זה.
Later, she did a different interview for a doc.
They're literally saying that the Hamas fighters treated women like queens? Israeli hostages said that, not me.
Documentary, which is what Ethan put on the screen. In that interview, she says that at least half the hostages she spoke to said they were sexually assaulted. At no point did she claim that anything had happened to her, and to my knowledge so far, no hostages have given first-hand accounts of being sexually assaulted in captivity.
כל פעם שפגשתי מישהו היה לפחות מישהי או מישהו אחד שחוו התעללות מינית והתעללות פיזית. כמעט, כאילו חצי מהן.
Now, other women have also claimed that while they weren't victims themselves, they spoke to others that were, asking people to believe secondhand accounts that change with no explanation is insane. I take issue with other people manipulating these women's horrific experiences to fit.
Here's the reality. Like, I don't know what happened. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these women were sexually assaulted or sexually humiliated or assaulted in some way. And if they came forward, I would listen to their testimonies, and I would want it investigated and the perpetrators prosecuted 100,000 quadrillion %. But we also have direct video evidence of Israel's raping people to death, innocent Gazans to death on video. So do you see the standard of evidence for what Ethan thinks is reasonable? Ethan does not talk about the Israeli officials raping Palestinian prisoners who have been convicted of no crime to death, but he will say that we're denying rapes when we're trying to find actual direct testimony and accusations by an individual. Do you see what Ethan Klein does here? He's knowingly lying. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is, I know he's not going to like to hear this, IDF Benjamin Netanyahu propaganda to justify the crimes they're committing in Gaza.
Their narratives. I have said countless times that in any military, paramilitary, or terrorist attack, there will unfortunately be sexual abuse. American troops have been found guilty of this countless times over the past few decades. I have to believe that there was sexual abuse on October 7th. I will also always believe victims who come forward to talk about their sexual abuse. I stand by that. But you don't care about victims, Ethan, because if you did, you wouldn't make up lies just to push your anti-Muslim Arab bias. What bias? This bias.
I do, on the other hand, acknowledge that, like, I think per capita, a lot of the...
By the way, just to back up what I was saying, here's a story from Le Monde, which is a French outlet. Beatings, deprivation, torture, rape. Palestinians speak of the hell of Israeli prisons. This is from last summer. Physicians for Human Rights Israel has denounced continuous and systemic abuse by prison staff. And there's a lot of stories on this. Like, if you go, IDF charges reservists with aggravated abuse of Palestinian prisoners. Indictment comes as 9 other soldiers appear in Israeli military court over allegations of sexual abuse of detainee. The only reason we're even prosecuting this case is because a video of it leaked. Used a baton and his assault rifle to attack prisoners on multiple occasions. His injuries included a ruptured intestine, severe injury to the anus, and lungs, broken ribs, the Israeli daily Haaretz reported. A doctor who treated the man told the paper when he saw the horrific extent of the injuries, he initially assumed they were caused by other inmates. I didn't believe an Israeli jailer would do such a thing. If the state and the members of the Knesset think there is no limit to the abuse of prisoners, let them come and kill them themselves like the Nazis, or close the hospital. It prompted an invasion of 2 military bases by politicians and demonstrators, mostly representing far-right parties who were furious about the arrests and described the men as heroes. So not only did they do rapes in Israel of Palestinian prisoners that are caught on video, there was riots to free the rapists. Ethan, do you have any comment on that? I have a feeling Ethan's not going to look at this clip.
Weird fucking terrorism and crimes and shit. I mean, there's definitely some strong thread of violence through Muslim community, or Arab Muslims to be more specific.
Anyways, that's the video, and in case Ethan doesn't want to watch it, here are my thoughts straight from his mouth.
I'm not watching the video. What's the virtue in that? Literally, if you want to know what's my opinion, just watch the fucking video. I went through he goes, he's not political and he's a fucking idiot. Good. That's why I took my time to tightly articulate shit that's made up. Absolutely pathetic. Articulate my thoughts into a video as concise as it can be. It's long because obviously I had a lot to say. And I think this stuff isn't so simple, which is why you need like
14 minutes
to say what I wanted to say. It's not simply something that you can convey so easily. And that you're not watching the fucking video. And that's somehow virtuous, that you're being a coward. You are literally being a coward, and that's virtuous in his community. Like, what are we talking about? How does his audience let him get away with this? I mean, yeah, sure. I apologize and acknowledgement when I'm wrong. I love Destiny.
The only reason that, by the way, guys, Ethan, the only reason he's gone after he's connected with Destiny, it's because of his mutual. By the way, chat. Wow, great job. That was very funny, Denims. Honestly, him attacking Denims is the best thing to ever happen to me and Denims. Like, legitimately, him attacking us is great because he's dumb as dirt, and he'll just continue to be like, Mike, it was cringe 6 years ago. He doesn't want to debate Sam Cedar. He doesn't want to debate Hassan. He doesn't want to debate me. Did you know that from May 5th, 2014 to May 22nd, 2014, Mike from PA was not on the ballot? What happened on May 22nd? Well, he won the Democratic nomination and was returned to the ballot. Oh. Oh my gosh, from May 5th to May 22nd, 2014, I wasn't on the ballot. Guys, this is the thing I didn't want you to know this. But from May 5th, 2014 to May 22nd, 2014, I was not on the ballot. How could I? Unsubbed. You aren't, but I voted for you. But I got on the ballot then. Don't forget, Mike, you were a Republican. Yeah, that's true. I was raised a Republican. I came from a Republican conservative family. And as far as I know, I was the first person to become a Democrat in my family. It's right. Maybe my sister was an independent first. I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's like, did you used to be different? And it's like, yep. Ethan Klein, the rapes thing, man. Holy shit. JJ the Ronin. Wait, what did JJ the Ronin say? Hold on. Was there one specific thing that changed your mind? What began my path to the left was a long process, but I would say it began with my younger sister, who is 18 months younger than me, coming out as gay to me. And this was in 2000 and I want to say like 1. She was still at high school. It might have been a little bit later than that. I have to go. I don't remember the exact year. That's when it began. I was still conservative then, but I had like that libertarian streak where I was like, who cares about abortion? And who cares about gay rights? And because I came from a military family, I had a perspective that was like, oh, we need to spend more money on the military. And then September 11th happened in 2000, right? And I knew one of the people who was killed on September 11th. So my politics were a little bit different. Like, I knew someone who died on September 11th. So like my politics in 2000 were a lot different. But through the course of my life, I changed. And I would say I became left-wing after, I was firmly left-wing after law school. And that was in 2013. Oh, somebody said something about me. I want to seize one of them. Somebody said something mean about me. Why is every Twitch channel I watch nowadays just talk about Ethan or DGG job? I hate these dudes that I have to hear about them constantly. Unfortunately, they're trying to deplatform us. So, you know, we're going to respond to that. All Ethan could use is that you're fat. Ethan Klein is, when Ethan Klein, before he got on to Wegovy or Ozempic, was 100 pounds heavier than I am now. Like, it's actually insane that somebody who is a fat slob blob is calling other people fat slob blobs. And it's like, yeah, as like an attack. It's like, what? Bro, you're one of us. Ethan Klein, the moment you stop taking Ozempic, you're going to balloon up. Like the girl from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, when she takes the blueberry candy. That's going to be you the moment you stop taking Ozempic at $2,000 a month. So please stop. Mike, don't you have to keep your voter's registration as whatever you have registered when you were 17? No. Man, somebody was saying some shit about me and I couldn't find them. Damn. They were trying to talk shit and then I lost them. Damn. It's one of the things, like, one of the key factors for my haters. Do you know what the key unifying feature of my haters? They have never watched a stream of mine. The key unifying feature of my haters is they have never watched a full stream of mine. The funniest thing is when he was shitting on me and he was trying to say how irrelevant I am, and then one of the staff was like, oh, Mike gets like 4,000 or whatever live concurrence, and they're like, oh. And then he went on a rant about how I have no talent or anything. Bro, you've never watched a stream. You've never watched a stream. Did you hear about the anti-abortion right-wing nut job in Maine who crashed out and got into a shootout with police? Yes, I did. Also, the other thing that's really funny is, like, I use Twitch Tracker to kind of watch, like, look at other streamers. And it's like, honest to God, like, people will be like, look at the Hassan fall off, right? They're talking about this period of 2023. This was Hassan had like a 6-month period where he wasn't super hot, right? That's it. His career has been almost nonstop growth. And look at this. He's the #5 largest English channel and the 6th channel worldwide for far left politics. That's incredible. And honestly, like, Ethan Klein and Destiny's attempts to deplatform me and damage me has only done this. And you want to see something really sick? Like, look at this. The Ethan Klein crash out. Honestly, I feel bad for her because the Ethan Klein crash out legitimately, and I mean this wholeheartedly, is going to fuck up her metrics. Like, she's not going to have, 45,000 peak viewers is insane, right? But now her metrics are going to be all fucked up because of her making fun of Ethan Klein and winning. Do they measure by subs or concurrent viewers? The things that matter as a Twitch streamer are your hours watched. Hours watched is what makes a Twitch streamer, right? It's not views, it's not followers, it's hours watched. That's the value. On YouTube, it's view count. And it's also helping Shonda Black. It's helping Gremlo. Everybody is just growing. Because what's happening is we're showing solidarity with one another. It's ironic because she didn't have a chance to have an election day high view count because Ethan got her banned. Exactly. Like, Ethan's helping her make up for the opportunities that he successfully denied her. Like, if Ethan Klein had just shut the fuck up, he would have done damage to her stream, and she would have had to work really hard to cover it up. But now, because he can't stop talking about her, he is helping her grow tremendously. Hilarious. And he used it to... And by the way, like, the thing that's funniest for me is the reason why Ethan is failing is because he's a Destiny fan. And when you're a Destiny fan, you're delusional. And you're in your own you're in a cult-like bubble. And they work really hard to create this a veneer of consensus as if the way they think is the way everyone thinks. And they built, and he's Destiny's lolcow. He legitimately is Destiny's lolcow. Destiny used to scream at the top of his lungs how Ethan was an R-slur. And now Ethan Klein has allowed himself to be manipulated by that guy. Can you imagine allowing yourself to become the servant of someone who thinks you're an R-slur? Like, no wonder it's not working. Holy shit, that's funny. All right, chat, let's talk about some good news. This will piss Ethan off. Here are the people of Gaza smiling once again.
Started to smell like Gaza. Their existence here is only temporary. We are walking back to our land, we are walking back to our homes after 15 months. No matter how, okay? We're getting back to our homes under their eyes, but they cannot do anything to pretend to prevent us from getting back. People are so happy. People are so happy. My God.
U.S. and Egyptian
I'm
military
walking now
contractors.
to the checkpoint. There, behind me, the American soldiers. That's the most important thing. After 15 months, they were not able to erase the Palestinian existence or the Palestinian cause, either in the north or in the south of Gaza Strip. This is the first return for
Ethan, how much does this piss you off that the Palestinian people and their resolve is stronger than ever? Ethan, what do you think about that? You tried to do a genocide, you tried to do ethnic cleansing, and the Palestinian people's resolve is stronger than ever. And they don't get billions of dollars for the world's superpower. That's incredible. The resilience of the human spirit.
Palestinians, and not gonna be the end, the last return. Okay, we still need to return to our lands that were occupied in 1948.
The right of return, Ethan.
No one can stop the Palestinians from returning to their lands. So, yes, we reached now. We are in the line in Salah ad-Din Road, near to Sirat. It's now 5 p.m.
Now, chat, do you know who Salah ad-Din is? If you don't know who Salah ad-Din is, he is the Muslim leader that pushed out the Crusader states. He liberated Jerusalem. Now, one thing you might notice about the Crusader states is they were a kind of a colonial project of the Europeans in the Holy Land, in the Levant, to try to return Jerusalem to the control of Christians. There's something very interesting about it, you know. There's something about it I just can't quite put my finger on. And they were ultimately defeated by this man.
Your city is full of women and children. If my army will die, so will your city.
You offer terms, I ask none.
I will give every soul safe conduct to Christian lands. Every soul. The women, the children, the old, and all your knights and soldiers, and your queen. Your king, such as he is, I leave to you, and what God will make of him. No one will be harmed. I swear to God.
The Christians butchered every Muslim within the walls when they took this city.
I am not those men. I am Salah ad-Din. Salah ad-Din.
Then under these terms, I surrender Jerusalem.
Assalamu alaikum.
And peace be with you. What is Jerusalem worth?
Nothing. Everything.
Anyway, what were we saying? Oh yes. Now, if you don't know, when the Crusaders took over Jerusalem in the First Crusade, they killed the innocent civilians in such wanton bloodshed that they said that they were literally walking through rivers of blood up to their ankles. When Saladin took Jerusalem, he kept his word, and no innocent person was harmed.
Sirat, it's now 5 p.m. and So, yes, we reached now. We are in the line in Salah ad-Din Road, near to Sirat. It's now 5 p.m. and let's see from now when are we going to enter Gaza and cross the checkpoint. It's already getting dark. We are still in the line. People are leaving their vehicles to have some coffee, to pray, to talk to the neighbors in the line. So Dahman is a colleague filmmaker, and he's driving us today to the north of Gaza Strip. He's my friend. We spent the whole genocide, and now we are finalizing the first phase of the genocide together. We have also Libre and Ahmed with us. Can we turn the lights on? Libre, say hi.
Hola, hello, مرحبا.
أحمد.
السلام عليكم. ترى مطاولة وأنا اللي هسوق فيكم. بدي أكون مصحصح.
يلا قهوة. طب عزمنا يا دهمان.
أنتم جايبين كاسات من هناك قلت لكم جيبوا كاسات. ليش نجيب كاسات؟ استنى مشت الطريق.
الله أكبر. He is trying to save the fuel because the line is advancing really slowly. I discovered that many people are doing the same to save fuel.
Smart.
Just pushing the vehicles while the vehicles are turned off. We've been waiting now for 5 hours, and the car moved only 300 meters since the beginning of the line.
بيتي موجود هان من يعني ابو 100 متر. إذا في أطفال أو نساء أو كذا أنا بيتي جاهز مفتوح يباتوا فيه النساء والأطفال. وإحنا جاهزين في أي خدمة.
الله عليك. في حد استجاب للشيء
والله هي ان شاء الله يعني حتتم الاستجابه باذن الله يعني النساء ما بخلين هيك فيش
It's crazy to me that you can see this kind of stuff and not think that these are human beings. Like racism to me is incomprehensible. It's wild. Genuinely insane to have racial and ethnic hatred. It is some weird ass motherfucking shit.
خلينا نعمل في الشارع هيك.
It's the sunrise of the second day for the people here waiting to cross the checkpoint of Salah ad-Din Road to go to the north of Gaza Strip. صباح الخير. احكي لنا أول شيء أنت وين راجع على الجيت؟
والله راجعين على غزة على الشاطئ.
على مخيم الشاطئ.
يعني من منطقة لمنطقة منشح وطمة غزة. يعني من مدرسة لمدرسة من أهلي لأخوي ومن أخوي لدار سيدي ومن دار سيدي للهلال ومن الهلال شردنا شفنا الموت لما رحنا على رفح من رفح شردنا على وين؟ على مواسخ خان يونس وهي حياتنا يعني نمتنا بس نروح نشوف ديارنا ونشوف دورنا ردم احنا صامدين ونشوف حياتنا.
الحمد لله على السلامة يا رب. وين راجعين؟
على الشيخ رضوان إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله.
بعد سنة 3 شهور. طبعا فاقدين ناس كتير فاقدين ناس حبايبنا ورا عندي في السيارة اللي ورا واحدة راجع لا أهل ولا دار ولا حاجة ولا أب ولا أم ولا أخوات ولا خوات ولا سيد ولا عمة ولا حدا إلها وفي واحدة تانية هي على الجهة الثانية راجع بدون أبو.
طب ما أنتوا على الدار وين رايحين؟
رايح بدون بيت ماليش بيت.
طب ليه رايح؟
تنصب هذه هاي شايفاها طلع هذا خيمة 100 عافية خدتها تنصبها.
ليه رايحين طيب؟ ليه مروح إذا ما عندك بيت؟
نروح هناك.
نروح وين؟
نروح في غزة.
Look at these little kids. This is what Ethan Klein thinks is okay to attack and bomb indiscriminately. Because there is a military-aged man in that car, I guess it's a free strike zone. These are literally my friends and my family. Like this is, you know, what could he even say? And he's insisting he's going to return to his home and he's going to set up a tent.
نروح في غزة 20 ساعة هاي نواقف في السير مش على الفاضي كان مع كتر اللهفة والشوق مش حاسس علي النعمة ما غمضتش.
I've been waiting in lines and lines and lines without food, without water, without bathrooms, without any place to rest. Everything can be easier. Everything can be easier. It's just the attempts to, you know, to kill the Palestinians. خلص, to make them suffer, to torture them, to make them fear.
We are waiting in a line now to go to the X-ray, to searching the vehicles. We're back. Alhamdulillah.
We made it to Gaza.
We made it to Gaza. We made it.
Look what they did to the city.
Made it to Gaza. I've never thought that I will be able to come here safe. You know, I was 100% sure that this moment would come, but when, how, I was not sure. But here am I again in Gaza. In Gaza, they destroyed the whole area. The whole area.
Israel has damaged or destroyed 74% of buildings in Gaza City.
Finally, I'm Bisan. I'm still alive. I'm in Gaza City right now. I am in my hometown. We are in North Gaza right now. We are in North Gaza right now. يلا. أنا في الرمال. أنا في الرمال. لا أنا رايحة عبد حلول عدل. هنام عند دار سيدي هناك وبعدين نرجع بكرة عادي نشوف الدنيا.
Our home was damaged but still standing. This is what we raised money for.
Where are we now?
Beit Hanun.
Tell them about my promise to you.
Okay. When we met Bisan and we first started to become friends, she's like, I must take you to Beit Hanun. And now, where are we?
In Beit Hanun.
In Beit Hanun.
That was May 2024.
Ah.
We committed our promises. We made it real. Sah, a huge destruction. The city has completely changed because of the destruction. Look there. But at least we are here.
To rebuild.
Yeah, to rebuild.
نزرع ايش اللي بريك؟ شو؟ خيار وبندورة وبطاطا
فجل باسل توم
برافو
كله انا وانت بنزرع يلا
جوا
يلا هاد
مكان المجنزرات هان نعمل شورة بصل شورة ثومة وشورة
Plant a
فلفل
crop of onions, garlic, where the tanks are. Israel lost. Womp womp. Israel lost. Just like the Crusader states lost. I'm very glad to hear that her home is still standing. And here's the thing, like, as much as Ethan Klein is going to scream his head off about these facts, everybody under the age of 40 knows who he is, knows what he believes, and is going to turn against it, turn away from it. Only the people that are truly depraved, who don't have a moral compass, are going to stick around with him. Only the people that don't know right from wrong are going to stick with him. And birds of a feather, we're going to keep winning. Speaking of winning, friend of the show, Sean Fain, I put out this video today.
This win was for my baby.
We're here today for a tentative agreement for a Detroit transaction.
This new contract is a life changer for all of us. When I come home today, I'm telling the family we're going to Disney.
The UAW has really made strides this year, especially with the down south contracts, with the big three finally saying we've had enough. You're making all this money. We need to make some of that money.
We have a 52% gain in wages.
Health and safety increases are a big benefit.
I know that things like COLA, that's big for us to get. Things like the profit sharing, that's huge. None of my friends have that.
I've been here 9 years, and we have never been able to reap the company's benefits through profit sharing.
Today was a historical day for us, my plant, my family.
This is the best day as a union member since I got my union card.
We just hit the lottery for 400 people, and their lives will be forever changed in a great way.
It took us collectively to make this happen. Us fighting together, standing together, being resilient, and not letting up.
We wore our shirts on Wednesdays. Our bargaining committee stood together and hyped us up, and we kept our foot down and walked in stride together.
After 5 contracts, this is long overdue.
A 99% strike authorization vote sends a pretty clear message. When we're willing to go on the picket lines in sub-zero weather, and almost 100% of us are behind that, that sends a pretty strong message that we are fed up, we're not going to take it anymore.
This is so huge. We're living in a time that almost feels like the 1930s outside of work. So to see that our union can come together and actually negotiate with a company, we're seeing that the little guy can win. The worker can win. We can do something when we come together instead of fighting amongst each other.
Financially, it would improve me to get out of debt, to set up a foundation, a future for my family, my kids, my wife.
This would improve my life because I'll be able to actually live. I don't have to just go to work and go home.
Now I can do my 40, maybe 45 hours and still have more time to spend with my child.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is the shirt he's wearing.
My wife.
I can buy work clothes instead of having to mend everything. I can buy new boots. I can buy a car. I can repair my car. I
wanted to show you this because I want people like you all to understand that the Palestinian issue is connected to these working class people having a better life. And they see that and they know that. You can't be progressive except for Palestine. You can't. I mean, Ethan Klein is a multimillionaire in his Beverly Hills mansion telling you he's progressive. And me and Hassan supporting these movements aren't? That he's relevant because he takes his advice from a sexual criminal? Disgusting.
You have more financial freedom in general.
Amazing. And just so you understand, this isn't you know, Ethan Klein's, you know, only move is to weaponize false accusations of anti-Semitism. The guy who is screaming N-words constantly, he's going to be the moral arbiter of ethnic bigotry or racial hatred. Let Peter Beinart talk to you about being Jewish after the destruction of Gaza.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermin Sheikh.
To talk more about Trump's call for the United States to seize Gaza and force out the entire Palestinian population, we're joined here in New York by Peter Beinart, editor-at-large of Jewish Currents and professor of journalism and political science at City University of New York. He's the author of the new book just out titled Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza, A Reckoning. Welcome back to the program, Peter, and congratulations on your book, which we'll turn to in a moment. But if we could first get you to respond to you know, the remarks that Trump made a couple of days ago, astonishing remarks about basically the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, turning it into the Riviera of the Middle East, and so on. If you could respond.
I mean, what we're seeing really is, at a macro level, is the question of whether you can do in the 21st century what you could do in the 19th century, which is to basically destroy entire populations of people because you view them as subhuman. Donald Trump views Palestinians as subhuman, and therefore wants to oversee a mass ethnic cleansing, which would be one of the greatest crimes of the century. And all across Washington, you hear people essentially shrug, or people say maybe it's impractical. I don't care. The question is not whether it's impractical. The question is whether we should be thinking about how we get Donald Trump in front of the International Criminal Court as a war criminal. This is one of the most monstrous things an American president has said in our time, and the fact that it can be assimilated like this is just testament to the profound dehumanization of Palestinians that suffuse.
Speaking of unions, Oregon's Nurses Association nurses are voting on a tentative agreement today at 4 p.m. with the Providence Healthcare. The hospitalists that are represented have an agreement that allows them to keep up the work stoppage as long as their nurses have not gotten a fair contract. So they will be out with the nurses in solidarity as long as that's true. I'm not sure if the proposed nurse TA has been released to the public, so I can't share details, but that's the current situation. Hell yeah, dude. Ethan is also an anti-Semite. I mean, Ethan Klein, I'm not comfortable just throwing the word anti-Semite on people, but I will say this. He said anti-Semitic stuff against Orthodox Jewish people. The people that were most visibly Jewish, he would film discreetly from a car and call them smelly and call them ugly and call them inbred because of their visible Jewish nature, the fact that they have the hats and the black coats. He would do that.
This is American public discourse.
I have a question for you. Diana Buttu, the well-known Palestinian attorney, when asked about this, I mean, hours after President
there was
Trump
another plane crash up in Alaska.
Made this announcement talking about the demolition site that is Gaza. She said she agreed it's a demolition site. And about moving Palestinians, she said, well, the first point would be moving them back to their homes. Can you give us the history that even you really had no sense of until you began to really study what was going on outside your Jewish education?
Sure. I was raised in a family where Israel was central and where we thought about Israel in terms of what it meant for Jewish safety, a state for Jews where Jews could be safe after the Holocaust. And that was a source of great psychological security, especially for my grandmother, for older people in my generation who themselves had experienced a lot of trauma in their lives. I'm embarrassed to say it was really not until my 30s when I went to spend time with Palestinians in the West Bank that I began to really face what Israel and Zionism had meant for Palestinians. And you're exactly right. Every American media discussion of Gaza should start with the fact that people in Gaza, most of them are not from Gaza. They are people who are from families that were forcibly expelled from what is now Israel. Many of them can see the lands from which their parents and grandparents were expelled from Gaza. They can see these fertile, relatively uncrowded territories while they live crowded into a ghetto half the size of New York City that the UN called unlivable for human beings before October 7th. And so, yes, if Gaza is unlivable because Israel and the United States have made it catastrophically unlivable, then people should be allowed to return to the places from which, not to expel Israeli Jews, but to live in equality alongside Israeli Jews, a principle that is considered unfathomable in Israel-Palestine, even though it's the principle that we supposedly believe in the United States.
So with those remarks, Peter, let's just get to your book. If you could just begin, Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza, A Reckoning. Explain why you wrote this book and to whom the book is addressed.
The book is addressed to my fellow Jews and trying to say that something has gone catastrophically wrong in our community when an Israeli government that claims to speak for the Jewish people and American Jewish leaders can watch a Jewish state with American weapons destroy most of the buildings, most of the hospitals, most of the schools, most of the agriculture, leave an unprecedented number of child amputees in Gaza, and then justify this with the flimsiest of possible justifications, as I go through in my book. Jewish tradition, as I understand it, believes in the infinite dignity of every human being. That is, we say every life is a universe. How is it that people that our tradition, which speaks that way, and yet our leadership today acts in such a way that is radically contrary to that principle?
Well, one of the things that you say is early on in the book, you talk about the secularization of Judaism, which in certain instances, as you say, has led to a kind of moral evasion. Of course, one should say that that's not only true of Judaism, but arguably of other Abrahamic faiths as well. You say, quote, in the absence of a belief in divine reward and punishment, we no longer wrestle in the same way with what our sacred texts say about Jewish ethical responsibility. If you could elaborate on that.
I think what's happened in Jewish communities in the U.S. around the world is that a religion, a vast religion that speaks in many, many different voices, but emphasizes the dignity of all human beings, has been swallowed by ethno-nationalism. In many Jewish communities in the United States today, you get in more trouble for challenging the legitimacy of the State of Israel than for questioning the authority of the Torah, right? The social penalties for being a critic of Israel are much greater than the social penalties for violating Shabbat or keeping kosher, which are foundational principles in Jewish faith. I think something similar in some ways is happening among many white Christians. In the era of Donald Trump, these people seem to think that if you don't have an American passport, you are worthless. It's as if that Christianity's universal message has been swallowed by the ethno-nationalism of America first. And in a way, when you see Jewish discourse about Israel, you see something similar. The state is sacred, and what our tradition says about human beings is ultimately devalued.
You write in your book, Peter, Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza, about the anguish of Palestinians. You say, this book is about the story Jews tell ourselves.
My mom, Scabs, is a travel nurse. Your mom is a scumbag. I'm sorry to tell you that, but your mom is a piece of shit. Sorry. Your mom sucks. Nobody should fuck your mom. Your mom is unfuckable. Are all travel nurses Scabs? No.
To block out the screams. So go back in history and talk to us about what Jews understand, Israelis understand, and what the standard education is and how you re-educated yourself. For example, right now, what's being talked about is this forcing out of the Palestinian population. It's not the first time. It's not even the second time. Talk about the exoduses.
Right. This is in Israel's political DNA. Israel was created with an act of mass expulsion of Palestinians. That's why those people are in Gaza in the first place. There was another act of mass expulsion in 1967, and there have been smaller expulsions since then, ongoing. Right? And so this is something that is inherent in the notion. If the notion of your state is that the state has to have a large Jewish majority, that Jews have to rule, then Palestinians constitute a demographic problem. Right? And so it's not really surprising at all that people on the Israeli right want to solve that demographic problem by getting rid of Palestinians. That's how Israel was created in the first place.
Explain what happened then in 1948. Explain what happened to the Palestinian villages.
They were completely demolished. What happened was that David Ben.
Sorry, Chad. I was looking at the Kanye post. He was saying something about how he's Hitler or something. I'm sorry, chat. And there was like a video of, next to the song. I'm sorry about that.
Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, said, this cannot be a truly Jewish state unless it has a roughly 80% Jewish.
He's such a fucking disgusting piece of shit. He legitimately is a disgusting piece of shit. And it's just like, anti-Semitism as a belief system is the belief system of pathetic fucking losers. You blame the the problems of capitalism on individuals, and it's like hopeless.
Majority, which was actually the state that Israel would have been given under the UN was far, far less than that. So you had to carry out mass ethnic cleansing. In Jewish communities, people tend to say this only began when the Arab countries invaded in May 1948. It's not true. Haifa and Jaffa, for instance, the largest Palestinian populations, were ethnically cleansed before May 1948 because it was impossible to create a Jewish state. There were simply too many Palestinians there, so you had to clear them off in order to create a large Jewish majority where Jews controlled the land. That's how Israel was created. And it's the refusal in Israel and in organized American Jewish communities and in Washington to honestly discuss that history that brings us to this point where we have an American president who wants to replay that history.
And so if you could say, Peter, you speak at some length in the book about the responses to October 7th in the Jewish communities, and in the U.S., I would say, in some ways, generally, the kinds of analogies that were drawn to October 7th, the images that were invoked by October 7th. And you are critical of some of those images. If you could elaborate on what the analogies are and what you think the better analogy, which you enumerate in the book, the better analogies are for what happened on October 7th.
Right. So what happened on October 7th was horrifying. It was really, for me, one of the worst days of my life. And I fundamentally oppose any targeting of civilians, no matter what the circumstances are. But if one wants to prevent future October 7th and make both Israeli Jews and Palestinians safer, you have to understand the conditions that existed in Gaza on October 6th, not to justify, but to understand. And instead what happened in the Jewish discourse was this was immediately called a pogrom. It was called the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. The implication was that this is the reenactment of the murderous anti-Semitism in Europe. But it's fundamentally wrong because that anti-Semitism took place in a case in which Jews were legal inferiors. You can't understand pogroms or the Holocaust without understanding the role of Jews as a subjugated people. But in Israel-Palestine, it's Palestinians who are a subjugated people, who live without basic rights, who are being oppressed. October 7th was an inhumane response to that oppression. And if you want to understand it, one should
the thing about like resistance and war is inhumane. War is inhumane. So, but like when I study the Polish resistance to the Nazis in World War II, some of the Polish resistance was murdering German civilians, so-called, who were settling in lands that were taken away from Polish people, especially Polish Jews. If those civilians were killed by the Polish resistance, that is a regrettable act of violence. You hate to see that. But you also understand that the resistance, the settler is trying to effectuate the policy of the Nazi government, which is displace Polish people and replace them with Germans. I think that is, so when the resistance kills a settler, is it regrettable? Is it inhumane? Absolutely. But it's a response to a crime. It's a response to the attempted extermination of the nation of the Polish people. So I don't want to waste a lot of time on it, quite frankly. I would have stopped the Nazis.
Think about other inhumane responses to oppression. Think about in our own country when Native Americans were forced off their land into smaller and smaller ghettos. There were many times in the 19th century where Native Americans broke out of those reservations and killed men, women, and children in pitiless attacks, right? But you had to understand the context of what was happening to them to understand that violence. Instead, what we see, and this is exactly what happened with Native Americans, is they're simply described as barbarians And when you describe them as barbarians and savages, you justify even more catastrophic violence against them.
Well, and you say, and this was a very interesting interpretation that you gave afterwards, you know, when you explained the correct way to understand this horrific violence of October 7th, you say that pondering these analogies is alien and uncomfortable. The analogy that you just gave, for example, of Native Americans. They alter, you write, they alter the script that explains who we are. And then you point out that earlier generations of Zionists made such comparisons and were, quote, less invested in Jewish innocence. So explain why that is. One would instinctively think the reverse, right? That it was in early Zionism that there was a greater investment in Jewish innocence and arguably a greater case for it.
Right. It's really remarkable now, right? Because today, if you were to call Israel a colonial enterprise, right, you would probably be kicked out of your synagogue. You would be censured by the American Congress, right? You could be penalized at some kind of university. But if you go back and read early Zionist writers, Theodor Herzl...
That's what they... that's the point. That's the fun of it. Don't you understand? That's the fun of it. That's what Ethan Klein... That's what Ethan Klein's enjoy. Ethan Klein likes the idea that he's lying to you. He likes the fact that if you go back and you read the writings, they're talking about how they want to dispossess the Arabs. They want to colonize, how they're not even specifically very Jewish. Like Theodor Herzl was not an observant Jew. He saw himself as the head of a nation that he was creating. And that would be, it would be the sword arm of the British Empire to vex and harass and attack Arabs, to disrupt their ability to form a counterbalance to the British Empire. He saw himself as a tool of Western domination explicitly. The fact that you say that now is enough to get you labeled an anti-Semite.
The most important founder of political Zionism, Vladimir Jabotinsky, the founder of revisionist Zionism, which is Benjamin Netanyahu's own tradition, they use this term frequently and positively to describe what they're doing. Herzl writes to Cecil Rhodes, the arch-imperialist of Southern Africa, and says, we're involved in a common enterprise here, right? Because for them, colonialism meant bringing progress and modernity to a backward part of the world and taking control over it from the populations that were there, because a population from a more advanced civilization could use the territory better, right? That's the real history of Zionism's own. You don't have to read Palestinians. You just have to read early Zionist writers, because there was an honesty there that is not possible today, because now we live in an age where colonialism is a dirty word. It wasn't a dirty word in the early 20th century.
Peter Beinart, how does growing up in South Africa inform your view?
I spent a fair amount of my childhood in a place where white South Africans, including members of my own family, were absolutely convinced that if there was legal equality, if black people got the vote and could form a black government, that their lives would be in mortal danger. It was considered just obvious. And the reason I think this is important is that it is so common in American Jewish and American discourse to assume that if the Palestinians got equality, Jews could never live in Israel and Palestine safely. And the point I try to make in my book is that white South Africans believe the same thing. Protestants in Northern Ireland believe the same thing. Ian Paisley, the Protestant leader, on the eve of the Good Friday Agreement, which gave Catholics political equality, called it prelude to genocide. So many white Southerners and white Americans in general believe that without slavery and segregation, white people would become the slaves, would become the oppressed class. It's not true. It wasn't true. In fact, what we find is that when you give people a voice in government, when they can be represented, that violence goes down because people have a nonviolent path for government to listen to them. That, it seems to me, is the lesson that Jews should try to learn from those experiences.
And the thing is, like, Ethan Klein would never watch this. Like, Ethan Klein would never watch this. What Ethan Klein would do is he would look at Peter and he would call him a capo and say he's helping the Nazis, right? That's the reality. Ethan Klein spits in the face of people like this. And the reason why he will never watch this is because he likes to live in the fiction where these people don't exist. Where his support of people like Yoav Gallant and the Israeli military, his IDF veteran, proud IDF veteran wife, they're the most left-wing Jewish people. They are the good progressives. They don't want to make you aware of somebody like Peter, because when the existence of somebody like Peter exists, it proves who Ethan Klein really is.
I mean, just to go back to a point that you made earlier, Peter, about the kind of injunction against saying something against Israel, critical of Israel, versus saying something against Judaism. You also point out in your, or being a Jew, you point out in the book that in Israel itself, there's no religious requirement for election to the Knesset. This is you writing. Of the 14 Israeli PMs, prime ministers, only one, Naftali Bennett, has observed Jewish law. But there is a Zionist requirement. Political parties cannot oppose, quote, the existence of the state of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. So if you could talk about what the implications of that are for the potential for a transformation into the kind of context that you've described post-apartheid South Africa.
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make is that both in Israel and the United States, in different ways, the Jewish community is structured to basically make the existence of a Jewish state, a state that privileges Jews over Palestinians, sacred, right? So in Israel, it doesn't matter whether you observe Jewish law. You can be the prime minister, but you can't run for Knesset under Israeli law unless you accept the principle of a state in which Jews rule. In the United States, if you look at Hillel, the organization that works on college campuses, they say very openly to students, we don't care whether you observe any Jewish practice at all, but if you don't support the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, then essentially you're not welcome here, right? To me, this is essentially what happens when you elevate ethno-nationalism, a Jewish state over Judaism itself.
Mm-hmm. And in fact,
Has there ever been a case of oppressed people getting equal rights and reversing the dynamic of oppression? You could argue that the Haitian Revolution was incredibly bloody, because that's more of a slave revolt. Maybe you could talk about like the colonization of Liberia, but they weren't directly in Liberia. They weren't targeting the people that had enslaved them. So it's hard, you know, settler colonialism creates these conditions. It isn't about oppressed versus oppressor. It's really the logic of colonization. People who say South Africa, somebody said South Africa, you're dead fucking wrong. What the fuck?
In the book, you cite Hannah Arendt, who was already warning of the dangers of Jewish nationalism, saying, quote, the greatness of this people, the Jewish people, was once that it believed in God, and now this people believes only in itself.
Yes, and in fact, our own tradition also speaks in this way, right? One of the gravest sins in Judaism is idolatry. Idolatry is the worship of something human-made. A state is human-made, right? Mm-hmm. In Jewish tradition, as I understand it, you start with the sanctity and the dignity of the individual, and that is paramount. And then a state must be evaluated. Its legitimacy is dependent on how it treats the individual. So again and again, we are required to say that we believe Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. No. The children of Gaza have a right to exist. They have a right to live. Their lives are of infinite value. And the question you ask about the structure, the political system of any state is that state guaranteeing that right to life and that right to flourish? And if it's not, if it's failing radically, if it's destroying those lives, then you have to think about reconstituting the state in a more ethical way.
Peter Beinart, leading Jewish organizations like the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, the AJC, would never question the findings of international legal organizations like the International Court of Justice or the ICC when it comes to concluding genocide took place in Bosnia, took place in Rwanda. Talk about the view of what's happening today. And I want to fold into that your quoting of the leading Jewish theologian, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who said, whenever I open the prayer book, I see before me the images of children burning with napalm.
Right. You know, Heschel is a hero among many American Jews because he brought the message of the prophets to America. When he marched in Selma and when he marched against the Vietnam War, he said, I believe in a tradition that will speak truth to power in the name of the protection of all life. And Heschel knew nothing of Vietnam. This man grew up as a chassid in Poland. He had no connection to those people, and yet he could see their infinite dignity, and he challenged the organized American Jewish community and the American government to stop destroying them. And so what I have...
Yeah, there's a grand tradition of that has fallen by the wayside.
Asked myself again and again and again, and I'm an observant Jew since October 7th, where is our religious and moral leadership today of rabbis who would get up and say, I can't pray because I am haunted by the sights of the child amputees in Gaza, of the people who are marching, whose homes have been destroyed, who are living in tents, whose tents are now flooded, who can't get hospital care, whose lives are being utterly ravaged. And yet I just see a community that goes about its business and indeed penalizes people who have the audacity to stand in the footsteps of Heschel and raise these moral concerns.
Well, talk about that, Peter. I mean, what has happened? What have you seen happen here in the community? Because you've also said, even as there has been this, very difficult to say anything critical of Israel, that there is a massive generational shift that's occurring, that younger people are much more critical. They are much more, oriented towards the, justice for Palestine. And what effect do you think that's having on the conversation?
Yes, because there has been a deep contradiction at the heart of American Jewish life. We have told our children that our safety and our values lead us to believe in equality under the law, never again for anyone, and also that we have a tradition of fierce and open debate, which we're very proud of. And then we say to those children, except for on the subject of Israel, which, by the way, is the most important subject, right? And children are good at noting the hypocrisy of their parents, right? And challenging the hypocrisy of their parents. And so many of these children, I've met so many of them who say, you are violating the very principles in which I was taught to believe about what it means to be a Jew, and I'm going to live those principles, even if it brings me into conflict with you, even if it brings me into conflict with our community.
And your response to the very serious crackdown on the pro-Palestinian, you could say pro-justice protests across the country, the encampments, both on the students, you're a professor yourself at CUNY Journalism School, the Newmark School of Journalism, and on professors, and ultimately President Trump saying he's going to deport the...
Wait, who's a bloodthirsty fascist? What does the ADL have to say about this? They don't care. The ADL is a spy agency of the Israeli state. Previously, it was already exposed as working with the South African apartheid government to spy on people protesting South Africa. Like, it's not a real civil rights organization. It only cares about supporting the Israeli state. That's it. It's fake. Wait, what happened?
I agree with this, and I would never do it because I think it's wrong, and what Elon did was wrong. But if you wanted to farm Twitter, you can go in front of Trump Tower, do a certain gesture, you probably get 34,000 likes. I would never do
NMP, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Yo, I know, what the fuck are you doing, man? Didn't she just get banned for this? She got banned for this, right? This is one of the things about farming people. This is why I don't like doing this kind of shit, because people who are of bad faith will use it. And then if you know that bad faith people are going to use it and you do it anyway, you are in fact becoming one of them.
Never do that.
I'm half German.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I'm technically kind of doing it.
I wouldn't do that because that's fucked up.
There. I'm good, Nick.
Oh, the Tesla factory? Make catchy do it? I would never do that.
Very, Nick, come on, man.
International students, I think he calls them alien students, who are, quote, Hamas sympathizers, meaning who engaged in pro-Palestinian protest.
Right. You know, Amy, you know this as well as I do. We have a tradition of learning that is sacred in our tradition, which is part of the reason that American Jews have had a particular affinity for these universities. So many American Jewish families have raised ourselves up through these universities and this tradition, and these universities are a core of American liberal democracy. And yet, in order to protect Israel from the criticism that is happening at these universities, because these universities have a lot of young progressive people, including a lot of young progressive Jews. The organized American Jewish community is essentially willing to get in bed with the Trump administration as it tries to crush academic freedom and freedom of speech at America's universities, and it won't stop on the question of Israel and Palestine. We know very well that the restrictions on free speech, that this is going to be a model and a template for when students want to protest about abortion rights and climate change and racial justice, right? And we're crushing these institutions, which American Jews claim to believe in so much, in order to try to protect them from criticism of Israel.
Peter Beinart, we want to thank you for being with us. Editor-at-large of Jewish Currents, professor of journalism and political science at the City University of New York. His new book is just out, Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza, A Reckoning.
This will be your 2028 Democratic ticket, and you will like it. Here's kind of my take on this one. Like, are you a eunuch? These two guys don't have the ability to, like, push their way through a wet paper bag. They wouldn't stand up to even 1 ounce of pushback from the capitalist class. Are you insane? Like, I know you know his name because he's on the TV and everything, but can you think better than like a boomer for 5 fucking seconds and maybe pick somebody who has the, you know, ability to push back against power? Everybody is a media-brained fucking loser at this point. Jesus fucking Christ. Now you're all getting bad empanada because I'm mad. You're getting a bad empanada video now.
Dude, they are still uploading Dennis Prager fireside chats. That man is immortal. How long do they have like a backlog of these for? He's being anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. Let's find out. Let's check out these epic arguments.
Do you think that being anti-Israel is anti-Semitic? I mean, people separate that. They say, well, I have friends that are Jewish and I love Jews, but I don't think that Israel has...
I have no idea who this guy is, and I doubt anyone watching knows who he is either.
The right to rob the land from the Palestinians, let's say.
Yeah, people say all that stuff, but of course, you know, anyone who
but I'm British and I'm speaking in a British accent.
Understands the reality knows.
He's a retired British Army officer. That's like the least qualified thing ever. Like to be an officer in a military, like that's something that you do specifically because you're not smart enough to get a real job. That's his only qualification. He wrote books, which anyone can do. Just self-publish something, bam, you're an author. And he's a retired British Army officer. Well, I'm convinced that this guy's qualified to tell me about this. Let's check it out.
That Israel has never robbed any land from any Palestinians.
Israel has never robbed any land from any Palestinians. Source, I said so.
Of course, it's part of the propaganda campaign that's been going on since at least the 1960s, and possibly
just the propaganda campaign. Okay,
for that as well. But the direct answer to the question that you asked me is being anti-Israel is being anti-Semitic. You can be opposed to Israel's specific policies. You can be opposed to various other aspects of what Israel is and stands for in the same way as you can to the United States of America or Britain or other countries. But if you oppose Israel, if you oppose the existence of Israel, then that is anti-Semitic. It's the one Jewish state in the world. Why would you be opposed to the Jewish state because it's a Jewish state?
So if you were opposed to the existence of, say, the USA as a white supremacist state, then does that mean you're anti-white? After all, it would be the only white ethno-nationalist state in the world.
You can oppose its policies, but if you say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, what you're...
Okay, I have a question for people. What if France said that if you're not ethnically French, you're a second-class citizen? And because there's a Jewish state, Jewish people are not ethnically citizens of France. Isn't that just Nazi shit? Isn't that just identical to Nazi shit? I don't understand how that it makes sense for it to be okay for Israel. It just doesn't make sense. If you're just like, you have to be of this ethnicity or else you're not a full citizen, that's just Nazi shit.
You're saying is the elimination of the Jewish state. That's what people chant. That's Hamas's motto.
Good on them.
That is pure, undiluted anti-Semitism.
How exactly is it anti-Semitic to be against the existence of an ethno-state for one people? How is it not anti-Palestinian to say what this guy says in the first place? Obviously it is. This guy, there's only one Palestinian state, my friend. Well, there's not actually. And it's because of Israel. You anti-Palestinianist.
Spelt out in
Isn't it weird how they all have like the same dumb talking points? Like they bring on a guy to say the same dumb shit, but in a British accent this time.
Hamas's charter, spelt out in Hamas's actions, which is supported by, in some cases unknowingly.
Whoa, the Palestinians want to eliminate the country that exists at their expense on their land, that massacres their people. Whoa! Next you're going to tell me that Poles wanted to destroy Nazi Germany. Oof.
But in many cases knowingly, supported by all these people on university campuses at the United Nations, in human rights organizations, and plethora of other places.
We're about 30 minutes into this interview, and I bet you that the comments on YouTube and people watching are something like, who is this Colonel Kemp?
Yeah, precisely. No one cares what he has to say. No one wants to watch this. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Are paying him to speak. And so I want to give you a chance to answer because I know the comments are already piling up. Is somebody paying you? Why are you doing this? You're not Jewish. You're not Israeli.
It's a grift, obviously. For someone with no marketable skills, he was...
Why are you selling out to one of the most profitable grifts in the entire world, being a pro-Israel sellout? Leading lights of Hollywood like Michael Rappaport stopped making Oscar-winning films to do the same. What draws you in?
Was a worthless military guy, and that does not get you anywhere in life. He needs money. Time to talk in a British accent, saying generic shit that no one cares about that's already been refuted a million times before.
Why are you doing this? This is obviously not in vogue. What you're saying is clearly not in vogue.
Is it not in vogue? This is literal, like the official position of every single Western country for the last like 50, 60, 70 years. Give me a fucking break.
Yeah, because when I was a child, I was taught to know right from wrong. And I was also taught that if I had the capability of standing up against things that were wrong, for example, at school against bullying.
And that's why I joined the British military. Because I'm against things that are wrong, like the British Empire.
Please. And this is what this is. This is a bullying campaign against Israel.
Israel is such a bullied victim. Israel, the American military base, with support of every single powerful country in the world, is a poor little bullied victim.
I have a responsibility to do that if I can.
This is for people who are lobotomized. Just totally lobotomized.
And if I was walking down the street and I saw an old lady getting kicked to pieces on the ground, I'd go...
Israel is an old lady getting kicked to pieces.
And help her. I couldn't just walk by with my eyes closed. And that's what this situation is. It's the same, very much the same sort of thing. And as to I'm being paid by Israel, I've been, as I mentioned, I've been in Israel for the last 3 months. No one has paid me a penny.
Oh, he absolutely has, I guarantee you. He was invited by the Israeli Foreign Ministry.
For doing that. I have never received a penny from Israel. I'm not in the pay of the Zionist entity. But
the Zionist entity? Also, he'll be like, I wasn't paid in dollars, so I didn't receive any pennies. I received shekels. It's like, what are those very lawyerly comments? Also, like, again... People are desperate to get attention now. Everyone understands that attention is assets. It's just only the dumbest motherfuckers think that this is even an argument. Also, I don't believe him.
But I know what you're saying. And I've been accused in the United Nations by the Palestinian...
What is this guy's name? Richard Kemp. Kemp has repeatedly spoken out against the investigation and prosecution of British soldiers for war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. Amazing. He's a pro-war crimes guy. So basically, this guy got famous by saying that war crimes are fine when Brits do them. Oh my god, he was even a British occupation soldier in Northern Ireland. Incredible. Like, this is someone who is so below mediocre that the only possible way that he could ever be in the position that he is by just saying, yeah, war crimes are good actually. Yeah, Israel is awesome actually. With the dumbest, stupidest talking points imaginable.
Ambassador of receiving $50,000 from the Zionist entity for making a speech supporting what Israel was doing, telling the truth about it, what Israel was doing. But I know what you're saying, and I'm going to get on my social media feed, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I get it every day. Who's paying you? Why are you doing it? Because many people out there, the haters, I think, can't understand.
You're way too old to be using that word.
Decent human being, if they have the power to do so, would stand up against what's wrong.
He frames Israel as like a poor little baby. A little baby. Poor little vulnerable baby being bullied by the big bad Palestinian global conspiracy. It's just mindless. But I mean, I need a mindless clip to reach my quota for the week, so I have to watch it. Small little baby is waywee.
Well, chat, today is Friday. And it's also Vio's birthday. Wow. So Vio is doing a birthday stream. Did you guys know that? That's going to be fun. It's actually Vio's birthday. Wow. But every Friday, we get together and we watch a film. This week, we are watching one of the best films ever made.
Have you seen the polls? You know, it's not fair. I mean, every other president had all of the Russians to blame for everything. What have I got?
For an unpopular president.
The voters felt that your being alive or dead had no real bearing on their daily lives.
It's time to give war a chance.
Dead. What are we going to do for an enemy now?
A riot between Americans and Canadians broke out last night.
Now, with a little inspiration.
All I said was Canadian beer sucked.
Give me 1 week and I'll have Americans burning maple leaves.
They'll create a cause worth fighting for.
Is Canadian Prime Minister Clark MacDonald a member of a satanic cult?
Oh, that is stunning.
Canadians are always dreaming up ways to ruin our lives. The metric system, for the love of John.
Captain Kirk of the USS Enterprise.
Canadian.
Do not panic. I'm in complete control.
Welcome to Canada.
I'm your worst nightmare.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We got ways of making you pronounce the letter O.
What we have here is a brave and misguided group of Americans who've gone right into Canada and kicked some serious Canadian butt.
Oh, Americans. Welcome to Ontario. Sportsman's paradise.
Isn't it, though?
John Candy.
There's a time to think, and there's a time to act. And this, gentleman, is no time to think.
Alan Alda.
Surrender pronto, or we'll level Toronto.
Rhea Perlman.
I'm in Canuck Central.
Kevin Pollak.
And when have you ever heard anyone say, honey, let's stay in and order some Canadian food?
And Rip Torn.
I can't kill America's neighbors.
I can.
From Michael Moore, director of Roger and Me.
I think it's time we put the America back in North America.
Canadian Bacon. The invasion is coming.
I gotta go. Didn't I tell you to go before the invasion?
This is Michael Moore's comedy. If you didn't know about Canadian Bacon, which written, produced, and directed by Michael Moore. This is Michael Moore's like comedic film, Canadian Bacon, which is now basically a documentary. We'll be watching that 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, over in the Discord. I'm going to throw the links down in the chat. If you want something to do tonight, we get together every Friday night and we throw together. We've been doing this since the pandemic, and we're still doing it. We've been doing it for like for years and years now. So come hang out, watch Michael Moore's comedy, Canadian Bacon, on the Central Committee Mike from PA Discord. My favorite candy clip.
Fight, fight, fight for Washington State. Win the victory. Win the day for Crimson and Gray. Best in the West, we know you'll all do your best. So on, fight till the end. Honor and glory you must win. So fight, fight, fight for Washington State and victory. Tom Tuttle from Tacoma. Do you know where you are? My guess is I'm in the clutches of the angry Pink Menace. I am Savannah. We will be spending much time together. You'll get nothing from me but my scorn. Tom, this is the People's Army. From here we strike out and bring hope to the oppressed. The oppressed who are still slaves to running dog, foul-breathed, capitalist vermin like yourself. We exist only to spread the word. Tom Tuttle from Tacoma. You will be brainwashed. Me, America's son? Ha! That will be a challenge. You bet. Our enemies are all those in league with imperialism. The bureaucrats, the big landlord class, and the reactionary section of the intelligentsia attached to them. Very good, Tom. You quote the chairman well. Our enemies are all around us. We must always be on our guard. Sure, we'll lose a lot of snooze time, but that's okay. We'll catch up after the revolution's over. That's enough, Tom. The leading force behind our revolution is the industrial proletariat. Our closest friends are the entire semi-proletariat and the petty bourgeoisie. That's enough, Tom. But there's so much more. I said that's enough! The time has come to tell you your mission. Oh, yes, my mission. I'd like that very much, comrade. Good. Tom, the bridge you were building for the lying, malignant, snake-infested Yankee Peace Corps. That bridge is important to us. It gives us an easy access across the river. We can drive our brand new people's truck across it and plaster the words of the chairman on every tree, rock, and animal for miles until we run out of the people's gas. Yes. You, Tom Tuttle of Tacoma, are going to ensure that that bridge is built and that no one in Lungta interferes with our plans. In a week, I'll have that village running like Peking. And if someone does stand in your way,
We love it. We love it. We love it, folks. We love it, folks. We want to brainwash you all, just like he was brainwashed. Man, it's so funny how all this is coming around. Like, we have the USAID funding being cut. We have the threats against Canada. Like, stuff that used to be jokes of over-the-top, like, fantasy American xenophobia or, you know, is now just real. Like, you can't even make satire anymore. You can't make jokes anymore. Oh, yeah, the SWAT challenge. We saw this yesterday. The champion. China even has the best SWAT team. They just keep winning. Even their hogs are better. The Dubai police SWAT competition. Oh, God. Whew. We're going to keep winning. Oh, man. It's been such a long day, huh? What a week. Everything, it's just like a moment of being proven completely right. Like, look at how unpopular Keir Starmer is. Like, I called this perfectly. All right, chat, I wanted to show you this clip because it kind of represents where the Democratic Party is and why it needs to be destroyed.
So let's say Trump, gets what he wants and the U.S. stops providing $40 billion in aid around the world. What happens then? I mean, do we launch a Kickstarter for the rest of the world? Who out there is going to step in to this gap?
Well, one of the things that we were so focused on is how do we turn the taxpayer resources that are given to us into more. So we actually, over the last 4 years, increased private sector contributions to development and humanitarian causes by about 40%. For every dollar we spent in a place like Ukraine, we turned it into $3 from other countries.
Can we stop this for a second and just be like, did that help Ukrainians? Millions of Ukrainians like killed or wounded, their economy collapsed, 14 million refugees, they've lost a quarter of their country. Like, what are you talking about? Hell, $1 of our aid became $4 to produce what outcome?
But when the U.S. pulls away, it's not clear what those other countries will do. There'll be a collective action problem. But the countries that stand most to benefit are authoritarian nations. They are nations.
The United States of America is not an authoritarian nation. People are being deported for supporting Palestine. They're rounding up people who have legitimate asylum claims and claiming refugee status is immaterial now. We ban women from controlling their own reproductive rights. Like, what? In what way is America not authoritarian? Because I could post stuff occasionally? Well, people are trying to ban me for what I say. It doesn't matter.
Thrive on corruption and thrive on chaos. You see tweets, indeed, this week from Russian officials celebrating the potential demise of U.S. aid. You see the officials from the People's Republic of China who are now confronting a serious issue in developing countries because those countries have gone into such debt to work with China that they now want to look elsewhere. They're returning to the United States.
So this is not the case. There is not one example of China do. First of all, this Samantha Power is probably one of the most evil people in the entire world. And that is what the United States does with the IMF. The IMF puts poor countries into debt and then has that debt be used to buy products from American corporations. And then when these countries can't pay back the debts, we steal and privatize their natural resources. And then we bribe their political class. That is the American model in a nutshell. That is not what China's doing. In fact, they don't have a single example of China doing that to any country. The only example people have ever mentioned is specifically a port facility who had its ownership changed to the bondholders. Not natural resources, not concessions. In fact, China has, for the most part, just forgiven debts. China forgives 23 loans for 17 African countries, expands win-win trade and infrastructure projects. China is forgiving 23 interest-free loans for 17 African countries after already canceling $3.4 billion and restructuring $50 billion of debt from 2000 to 2019. Beijing plunged more infrastructure projects and offered favorable trade deals in a win-win model of mutually beneficial cooperation. Oh, wait. So she's just lying, as usual.
This is a gift to Russia and China.
This is a huge gift to the People's Republic of China, particularly because they are showing up and trying to bring countries into their orbit in order to be able to access critical minerals, in order to be able to have their supply chains reside in these developing countries. But those countries...
Unlike the United States, right? Unlike the United States?
Countries were turning toward the United States because we offer an entirely different value proposition that is rooted fundamentally in caring about the people in the countries
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
in which we work.
I'm in a labor organizing space of a large multinational tech company. How do you handle record behavior that is turning people off the group, supporting Trump, Musk, etc., that say we need their voices to organize Republican spaces? If somebody is talking about pro-Trump, pro-Musk shit, there's something called the tyranny annoying, where you just tell them to shut the fuck up and focus on what you all agree on, which is organizing the space. Spreading pro-Trump messaging is contrary to that because Trump is anti-union. So it's okay, to have your own difference of opinion and your own values, but you don't bring things into the organizing space that are contrary to the organizing space. And quite frankly, you don't have to have everybody in the organizing space. You don't need 100% of people to agree. I'm not saying to kick people out, because this is the other thing that you should keep in mind. You'll be surprised who is actually pro-union and who isn't when the rubber meets the road. A lot of libs pretend to be pro-union, but when the union organization is actually happening, they run away from confrontation. And a lot of people that you think are conservative, when the union happens, they stand up and fight. Don't allow just like petty politics opinions to stand in the way of action. All right, let's talk about what Israel is planning to do to the Middle East.
This is a real wake-up call to the whole world. The dream of greater Israel is within touching distance. Trump described Gaza as...
Gaza is a hellhole right now. It's all death in Gaza. Nothing but death and destruction.
While the man responsible for these war crimes and wanted on an arrest warrant by the International Criminal Court was sitting 3 feet away, grinning. Trump said he would transfer 1.8 million Palestinians. I'm not sure how he comes to that figure. There are 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. What happens to the rest? Are they all killed?
We're talking about probably 1.7 million people, 1.7 million, maybe 1.8 million. But I think all of them, I think they'll be resettled.
This is ethnic cleansing by presidential decree.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it
and turn it into
the Riviera of the Middle East. Gaza is interesting. It's a phenomenal location. On the sea, best weather. Some beautiful things could be done with it.
This announcement doesn't come totally out of the blue. Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, has mused that Gaza would make absolutely superb Mediterranean beachfront property.
In Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable from Israel's perspective. I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up. If I was Israel right now, I would just bulldoze something in the Negev. I would try to move people in there. I know that won't be the popular thing to do, but I think that that's a better option to do so that you can go in and finish the job.
Well, we all know that Trump is being bankrolled by Zionist billionaires. We also know that he's filled his cabinet with people who just simply parrot Israel's talking points.
He's appointed an ambassador in Mike Huckabee, who believes that there's no such thing as a Palestinian.
There really is no such thing as, and I have to be careful in saying this, because people will really get upset, there's really no such thing as a Palestinian.
He's appointed a defense secretary in Pete Hegseth, who says that a third temple should be built where the Al-Aqsa Mosque now is.
The declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle, and there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible.
For the national religious right, their dreams of greater Israel are within touching distance. Trump may dress this up as in sort of fake concern for the Palestinians.
I think they'll be resettled in areas where they can live a beautiful life and not be worried about dying every day.
Of course they deserve to live in a decent life, but they also deserve to live in their own homes, and they also deserve to live in their own land. Who can possibly think that this is now just a fight between Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Gaza? This is Israel, America, against the entire...
That's what it's always been. That's what it's always been.
Palestinian people.
I've said this before, I'll say it again. You are the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House.
I'm starting to understand why Benjamin Netanyahu accepted a ceasefire deal when there was so much opposition to it at home. For Netanyahu,
the sight of Hamas in pristine Toyota Jeeps and new uniforms,
evidently in control of Gaza, and releasing the hostages who were in good shape was deeply, deeply humiliating. And Netanyahu obviously did not want this to go on. He's now persuaded the American president to allow him to pull
the Hamas keeping hostages in tunnels treated their hostages better than Israel is treating Palestinian prisoners in their secure jails. That's absolutely disgusting.
The plug on any further hostage.
Why doesn't Egypt just bring in the Palestinians? Because it's not their land, dumbass. Because Palestinians have a right to live in their territory and on their land without being invaded by Israel.
Release. What incentive has he given Hamas even to continue with the current stage 1 ceasefire and to honor its commitments if America tears up everything negotiated? And this makes Trump's push for a ceasefire around the time of his inauguration even more cynical a gesture, because he wasn't even serious about getting the hostages back. Pledges he made to families of the hostages with whom he surrounded himself in. He used them basically as stage props for his inauguration. But you can't have a continuing hostage release and war and greater Israel at the same time. It's one or the other. And what appears to be happening is that he's thrown the hostages down a deep hole and has given Netanyahu the green light to resume total war in Gaza. Not just that, to resume total war in the West Bank with the specific purpose of mass population transfer. Taking over the Gaza Strip is something Trump forgot to mention in his 2024 presidential campaign.
I'm going to ask if I could, all of my friends to come up from the Arab and Muslim part of Michigan.
We as Muslims stand with President Trump because he promises peace. He promises peace, not war.
Trump campaigned on a basis of stopping all wars, but this is not a basis for deconfliction. This is a basis for reconfliction. The penny must now have dropped that following Israel down the rabbit hole will set the entire region of the Middle East on fire. It is not a recipe for stopping wars.
I will say this very clearly, that right now what Donald Trump is saying is absolutely no different than what Joe Biden was doing. In fact, Donald Trump telling them it's time to end the war and do a ceasefire was substantially better than what Biden was doing. However, him coming out and saying that Israel should ethnically cleanse and America will own it or whatever the fuck is total nonsense. And the reason why it's not happening is not because Donald Trump doesn't want to, or Israel doesn't want to, or Biden didn't want it. The reason why it won't happen is because the Egyptians and the Saudis will not allow it to happen. So the only thing that this basically shows something very, very, very clear, that the only place where the U.S. can truly dictate the policy is Israel.
It is a recipe for Californian-style wildfires. It is the wind which will project devastation across a vast, tinder-dry region. It's a recipe for regional war. I cannot emphasize enough how dangerous this is for the stability of Israel's neighbors. Egypt has been quiet for all the wrong reasons under dictatorship, but it has held its border with Israel. Jordan has been quiet, very, very uneasily so. But with Israel now threatening to interfere in Syria and pursue its plan to divide it into cantons.
USA annexed Mexico and they still visit the same territory. Same can be done for Palestine and the folks who inhabit the land. So, yes, I agree with you that the Mexican-American war that caused the United States to steal large swaths of Mexico is substantially similar to Israel's war on the Palestinians. You are right. It is very similar. That is true. Now, the difference is that was done in the 1830s and 1840s, and this is 2025. And in the intervening 200 years, we developed things like modern international law. We have morals. We have legal systems. We have the UN Charter. We have, we as a human race have evolved beyond imperialist fascists from the 19th century. Or proto-fascists from the 19th century. So, yes, I do agree. Israel is a 19th century throwback. You're right. Bad things happened before. Why can't we do evil things now? You know what also happened 100 years ago? Genocides. Does that make the genocide of today justifiable in some way because we did genocides in the past? Is slavery now justified because it was done in the past? We're supposed to progress as a human race, not go backward.
And with its refusal to pull out of Lebanon and its annexation plans to the West Bank, this is an absolute recipe for war on all its borders and the destabilization of all of its neighbors. And there is no Arab leader now who has not now come to the same conclusion. Both Jordan and Egypt think that a population transfer of over 1 million Palestinians from Gaza, either to Egypt or to Jordan, would be an existential issue. And senior sources in Jordan have told Middle East Eye that this would be a cause for war. This is the same country right now allows Israeli jets and American jets to use its airspace to shoot down Iranian drones. Jordan receives 1.2 billion in US aid, but it is serious when it says that it would go to war over this. Egypt is serious when it says it cannot accept Palestinian refugees. Now, if it were down purely to the likes of President of Egypt, Sisi, I'm sure an agreement could be reached because he and Trump are extremely dishonest and transactional leaders. However, it's not down to Sisi. It is down to the Egyptian army, who knows that how fragile the Egyptian state is after 10 years of military dictatorship.
Yeah, I tweeted about that,
Jules. The last thing that they could contain is a huge, angry population of highly active Palestinians, all trying to use Egypt as a base on which to rid the Israeli occupation forces from their homes and their land in Gaza. Gaza will have become a complete symbol of crushed Palestinian statehood. Gaza, as a piece of turf, has now become almost sacred to the Palestinian cause. It is no longer just a place where Gazan refugees from previous conflicts ended up. It has become sacred turf in its own right. You can see exactly how determined the Gazans have been to go back. 500,000 have walked back into northern Gaza to stake claim to their houses and their ruins, even though they are piles of concrete.
Netanyahu and Trump. At first, fuck you. Then, you see, this is the rubble of my house, which was destroyed by you and your arms. Do you think I will leave my home? I will leave the rubble of my home? No, I will never. I will remove the rubble with my hands and will rebuild my house with my hands. And every single Gazan will do the same as me. We will never We will never leave our home. We will never leave our home to you.
Every Palestinian, wherever he or she is, in whatever they are doing in any part of the world, will feel that this is a mortal blow to A, to their identity, and B, to their desire and their demand now for self-determination. This is an attack on every Palestinian, and each Arab government who is threatened by this threat of mass population transfer should immediately stop all security cooperation with Israel as a sign that they are serious. And Trump should listen seriously to the blowback he's now going to get and the absolute maelstrom of instability that he would have.
Did you guys hear that there's a asteroid heading our way? Odds of an asteroid impact in 2032 just went up. Here's why experts say you shouldn't worry. We're still at a 97.7% chance of a miss from this asteroid. Have you seen the projected locations of it? I think one of the impact, I saw like a projection of possible impact sites. I think Israel was actually in the impact zone. The odds of the Israel 2024 YR4 impacting Earth in 2032 have increased to 1 in 43. Despite this, you should worry about the potential impact of this asteroid. They expect the chance of an impact to fall dramatically in the future when we know more about its orbit. Asteroid hunter David Rankin first pre-covered, short for pre-discovery recovery, asteroid 2024 YR4 in data from the Catalina Sky Survey, meaning he was able to find images of the space rock and archival data that was gathered prior to its official discovery. When it passes our planet in 70 years, we're 1 in 83, so it might seem like the chances of a strike have almost doubled, but there's another way to present those numbers. There's a 97.7% chance of a miss from this asteroid. So the plane of the asteroid is on is pretty well understood, but the position along that plane is not. A general rule is that asteroids which only have a single apparition of observation usually have a few months of their arc, have high uncertainty. YR4 is currently outbound, heading away from Earth, meaning it is difficult to observe. Rankin and his colleagues will continue to track the space rock through February 2025 with 8-meter telescopes at the Catalina Sky Survey. So we'll figure out if it's going to hit when it turns back. Uh-oh.
Kicked up with this announcement. In particular, Europe should wake up. Europe cannot stand by and watch a catastrophe in the East Mediterranean unfold, because it is the East Mediterranean. And we know what happened with a wave of 1 million Syrian refugees in Germany. It sunk Angela Merkel, and it changed the politics of Germany forever. Germans should ask themselves, what will happen if 2 million Palestinians from Gaza and millions more from the West Bank start knocking on its doors and Europe's doors? This is a European disaster in the making, not just an American and Israeli one. They have got to now make statements and actually intervene and say, over our dead body, is this going to actually happen? And it's all done on the basis of lies. Netanyahu repeated the demonstrable lie that babies had been burnt alive on October the 7th.
They burnt babies alive?
Israel keeps on going back to October the 7th as the sort of moral foundation block to everything it has done in 15 months. But just judge for yourself what has happened in those 15 months. 80% of Gaza has been destroyed. At least 50,000, and probably 3 times that number, have been killed in Gaza. So there are about 8,000 people missing. It has been October the 7th every week in Gaza ever since. And we, the international community, have just stood by and allowed this to happen.
The entire Western media has concentrated on the release of the hostages that Hamas released in good condition. No one has given any thought to the prisoners who were released by Israel, some of whom showed signs of being beaten up before their release, and they were released in very bad condition.
بنقومكم المي هذا السخنه يخلوه على 100 حراره، تيجي الجنديه وتشب على راسه. تجيب راسه كان لما يعني يسمع الصوت، لو في حدا يسمع شو كلش من صوت. اللي راح جلد راسه هنا، الجسم راح، يعني شيء هذا كانت عذابه.
No one's commented on this. No one's commented on the continuing arrests that take place every day while Israel is conducting operations in the West Bank. And so the total number of prisoners that Israel has at any one point never really varies, because even though you have high-profile events like prisoner releases, they're constantly replenishing the stocks of prisoners day in, day out, and that is just regarded as normal life. The operation that's now going on in the West Bank suits Netanyahu. It's a gift to Bezalel Smotrich, his finance minister, and the de facto consul general of the West Bank. That is the real prize of the extreme religious right. It's the West Bank. It's what they regard as the biblical home of the Jews, and they want to annex it. And
for the national religious right, their dreams of greater Israel are within touching distance.
And Israel is doing its damnedest right now to collapse the PA in the West Bank. What's happened in Jenin has been a fight between the Palestinian security services and Jenin resistance fighters, which preceded the current Israeli operation. The PA is thus doing much, much more than simply collaborating with the invader and the occupier. It's doing their work for them, and they're working sequentially. This is designed to rob Mahmoud Abbas and Ramallah of any remaining authority that he has over the West Bank. And I think this is being done deliberately by Israel to collapse the PA. And all you have then is a series of townships, all gated, all closed by the Israeli...
Look at by the way, chat, do you think Israel could afford this? Do you guys think Israel could afford this? The apparatus of apartheid is paid for by American tax dollars. Israel doesn't produce enough value in the global economy to be able to afford this. That's a reality.
Permanently under siege and permanently under control of Israel, who want to return to an era where they deal with hundreds of local leaders which they divide and rule at will, is their fundamental blueprint for a Palestine that is very, very far from being an authority and even further from being a Palestinian state. Remember that Netanyahu thinks strategically, and that his legacy will be to have killed a Palestinian state before it could even be born. And that is what he's aiming at now in the West Bank, and what the ruins of Gaza could allow him to do. Impunity that Israel has enjoyed carries on and will carry on with bells on under the Trump administration. But it's no longer about now what Israel can get away with. It's about the big forces that will change the course of the war are the forces within Israel itself, the loss of faith, the loss of ability just to keep on fighting. A majority is in favor of the ceasefire and of stopping a war, not out of any moral qualms for the Palestinians. 62% of Israel still believes that there are no such thing as an innocent Palestinian in Gaza. So it's not out of moral qualms, it's out of war fatigue. And regional forces as well. I'm not talking about the regional forces of governments, but of their population. The Sunni Arab world has been energized in a way which has not been seen for decades. In a sense, it was their passivity that allowed Israel to get away with murder every single day on the West Bank, and not even mentioned in their news bulletins. That was the situation in 2017 when Trump took over. Trump 1.0 took over when the Palestinian cause was all but dead and buried. Everyone was talking about money, normalization, new projects, a train line that would have gone all the way from Saudi Arabia to Haifa, all of these possibilities. And the Palestinians were Gastarbeiter. They were movable pieces. They didn't have statehood. They didn't have a land. They could have their enclave on the desert. If you look at Trump's plan for Palestine, his map, as published in his deal of the century, it's of various enclaves which are totally split up. No contiguous land, some industrial park in the Negev desert. That's the most that they could aspire to. Not East Jerusalem, nothing. That was the situation in 2015. Now compare that to the situation now, where everyone is literally up in arms. And you have, especially in countries which are pro-Israel and which have signed a normalization deal, like Morocco. You have a Moroccan with a US green card getting up and stabbing and injuring seriously Israelis in Tel Aviv. Now, I'm not praising that. As a commentator, it is noteworthy that a Moroccan does this. And that is why Israel is so wrong to think in terms of normalization with governments when the hatred that they have engendered in up-and-coming Moroccans is there to be seen. Really,
I mean, that's the kind of, that's the square, the circle that can't be squared, I should say. Like, the more they repress the Muslim world, the Arab world, the more their elite gets out of step with regular people, the more the greater the chance of rupture, the more strain. It's like a supporting beam of American imperialism is flexing and flexing and flexing and more. You could only hold up this edifice for so long. It's only a matter of time before American support is withdrawn. And Israel should be looking for that future.
We should be thinking, and they should be thinking, about what they're doing in this war and how long they can carry maintaining this level of maximum force and maximum destruction. Israel is only prevailing by literally leveling all the neighborhoods around it, and it cannot carry on like that. It simply cannot exist as an armed state which levels southern Lebanon, levels Gaza, levels the West Bank, and occupies now a larger chunk of Syria than it is occupying in Gaza. It cannot exist by this policy of maximum force because the Arab world and its neighbors have a memory and they will get these lands back. It won't necessarily be tomorrow, but they will get these lands back. And this is not peace that is being established. It's laying the foundations for a regional war.
And 76 years after this first started, one thing is for certain, the Palestinians are going nowhere. This period of history underlines the importance of independent media like the Middle East Eye and Double Down News as never before. Please keep on reading us and following us.
These are the organizations that will stay with the story and will not abandon it and will inform you better than anyone else will. Support Double Down News on Patreon and please read Middle East
Eye. The Democratic Party is like, why do people want to be part of it? Can someone explain to me why people even defend being part of it at this point? Like, look at this story. I wanted to show you this story. A Harris campaign organizer says senior officials ordered them to erase voters who asked about Gaza, marking emails as no response so they'd be removed from outreach. No engagement, no persuasion, just ignored. The only clowns are the ones who decided to abdicate on this. We didn't create a new category for Gaza responses out of fear that category would be leaked. Instead, we were told to mark them as no response, the organizer said, faulting top Harris campaign leaders for failing to address the issue. The only clowns out there are those who are in senior leadership and decided to abdicate on this issue, who silenced a Palestinian speaker at the DNC, and who told us to ignore it every time a voter asked us about Gaza. A Harris organizer who worked on youth turnout said that senior campaign officials gave them an order. Whenever they sent out mass volunteer or fundraising emails and people replied by asking about Gaza, they were told to mark it as no response. The result, they seldom ended up engaging with voters on that issue. Can somebody get a recording or a copy of this order? And there you have it. I don't even know what you could even say about that. Whew. Man, I'm tired. Let's take a look at Bisan got scammed in Japan. Wait, what?
Because I've been in that situation before in the past, and I've had to do crazy. I've had to beg, cry, get on my hands and knees and say, "Please, can you let this slide?"
Oh, actually, you know what? Fuck this. I wanted to see this. I wanted to talk about this. I found this article. Okay. As Trump attacks DEI, some on the left approve. I approve. I approve. There, I said it. I approve. I approve. Not because I'm against diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm 100% in favor of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I approve of getting rid of the liberal crap that is presented as diversity, equity, and inclusion, when in actuality, it's tokenization and control. I made this. I hope it helps. What's this? What liberals think decided the 2024 election. I chose the right path. Fuck Kamala Harris. Third-party voters, vote for Harris. Kamala wins despite third-party voters not making up the difference in Trump's margin of victory across swing states. Do not vote for Harris. Trump wins. Who actually decided the 2024 election? I chose the right path. Fuck the voters. I'm the lesser evil. Call for a weapons embargo to pressure Biden to stop genocide. Kamala wins because 29% of the 19 million Biden 2020 voters that didn't vote in 2024, of which specifically listed Gaza as the top issue for not voting, turn out for her, and she wins enough swing states. Push past 270. I think it's impossible to make those kind of clean arguments because things are more complicated than that. The reason why Kamala Harris didn't change her position is because she didn't care about what regular people thought. So it wasn't just that one thing. It was all her whole campaign. Her whole campaign was out of touch. Gaza is just the example that proves it. A few days after President Trump issued an order urging the private sector to end illegal DEI discrimination preferences, Reverend Al Sharpton led 100 people into a Costco in East Harlem for a so-called boycott. The idea was to shop and support the company for maintaining its diversity, equity, and inclusion policies amid pressure from the new administration. But the gesture by the civil rights activists did not win universal acclaim on the political left. In interviews, self-identified socialists and other leftists worried that Mr. Sharpton's action helped bolster the company at a moment when it faced pressure from unionized workers who had threatened to strike beginning February 1st. Al Sharpton making Costco into a titan of progress that needs mass support days before a potential strike, said Bhaskar Sankara, the president of the progressive magazine The Nation, grumbled on Platform X. The episode at Costco, which did not respond to a request for comment, illustrates an underappreciated tension on the left at a time when Mr. Trump had targeted diversity initiatives. Some on the left have expressed skepticism of such programs, portraying them as a diversion from attacking economic inequality and even an obstacle in doing so. I am definitely happy this stuff is buried for now, and I hope it doesn't come back. Corporate-backed initiatives promoting diversity could take various forms. Starbucks, for instance, pledges to work hard to ensure our hiring practices are competitive, fair, and inclusive, and says it is committed to consistently achieving 100% gender and race pay equity. It also offers anti-bias training. And guess what's happening, chat? I feel like I can't talk anymore. Hold on, let me drink something. Okay. So what are these companies doing? They're getting rid of them. And guess what? Nothing's changing. But socialists like Mr. Sankara and others who share his critique say they prefer activism that focuses on class rather than racial or gender and sexual identity. They tend to see labor unions and worker-led organizing as more effective solution to inequality. Hey, chat, they don't tend to see it. It's a fact. The single most effective policy for closing gender and wage gaps is unions. No other policy does more to reduce income and wealth inequality between groups than being in a union. Unions reduce racial wage gap and racial wealth gaps, and this is largely the result of union pay premium and the enhanced job protections enjoyed by workers covered by a union contract. The union advantage benefits all workers and has an equalizing effect on black-like wages. So in other words, this is what happens. Wages for people of color, black people, women, they rise dramatically. Wages for white men rise dramatically as well. Not as much relatively to where they were before the union, but they also see a premium. So what ends up happening is all the workers are better off. Even the white guys who had the premium of being, they were better off before, right? No, when you bring in the union, they get better off too. And so all you do is you show the white guy you're getting a raise, and he starts focusing on being part of that team, which is why I showed you guys that video from the UAW. It had people from all backgrounds, and they were all working together, pulling together, because they all won. And that's how you overcome racism. Though deeply suspicious of Mr. Trump, whom they see as attacking DEI policies for political gain and pretext for slashing government, these leftists see the turn against DEI programs as an opportunity to reorient Democrats in a direction that will deliver more gains for workers and be more palatable to a majority of voters. The debate over diversity initiatives even surfaced during a recent race to lead the Democratic Party. At a candidate forum before the party selected a new chairman, candidates were asked if they would commit to appointing more transgender people to at-large Democratic National Committee seats and to make sure the holders of these seats were ethnically diverse. One of the candidates, Faiz Shakir, refused, saying he disagreed with constituting the committee based on people's identities. In an interview, Mr. Shakir, a former manager of senior Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, said DEI programs often serve to divide the working class and soften the actual confrontation with corporate power we need in society. Workplace DEI policies essentially buy off workers on the cheap, adding, you get a penny for your efforts, a little trinket here or there, that should mollify you. Trump has directed Musk to review Pentagon spending. Yeah, we'll see. I'll believe it when I see it. Those on the left who have studied diversity initiatives like anti-racism and implicit bias trainings point out such programs may not work as advertised. A study of hundreds of employers over 3 decades suggests that the beneficial effects of such training tend to fade within days, and that mandatory training can even increase racial resentment. While some on the left nonetheless support DEI, leftist critics argue that these programs tend to advance the interests of companies rather than workers. DEI is fundamentally a tool of management, said Jennifer C. Pan, author of Selling Social Justice: Why the Rich Love Anti-Racism, a book to be released in May by publishing house Verso. In her book, Ms. Pan cites examples of how employers and anti-union consultants deploy DEI programs as a way to undermine union campaigns by diffusing pressure from workers. Those who share a view often cite evidence suggesting that unions are more effective than DEI programs in closing wage gaps between employees of different genders and races by raising wage floors, and improving benefits like paid sick leave. Unlike a labor contract, they note, DEI goals typically don't impose a direct legal obligation on companies because it's all volunteer bullshit. I'm from Germany, and I think the American people need to go on the streets against Trump. You need to fight the AfD, dude. Take the log out of your own eye. You need to be fighting AfD, dude. Kick America out of Germany. Leave NATO. You want to stop American power? That's how you stop it. You want to stop Trump? Stop being pushed around by America. Stop being our little lapdog. Form your own European Union military. Leave NATO. Challenge Trump directly. That if you want to stop Trump, that's how you stop Trump. Use your own power. Other studies have found that union membership also reduces racial bias, perhaps because unions enlist workers of different races to work together to achieve shared goals. So here we have it. Unions reduce racial bias, and they reduce the race and gender wage gap better than any other policy. Seems like we should be doing unions. My perspective is the only thing that actually enforces a DEI is a union contract, said Kevin Gallagher, a former worker at Apple retail store in Townsend, Maryland, who helped lead a successful union campaign there and now works as an organizer for the International Association of Machinists. More politically moderate defenders of DEI can see that the programs fall short of their stated goals and say this is by design. Alan B. Tillery, co-founder and chief executive of 2040 Strategy Group, advises employers on diversity programs, argued that policies like eliminating college degree requirements for certain jobs were likely to be more effective in creating opportunities for Black and Latino workers than anti-bias training, but they would often lie outside the comfort zone of corporate executives. These things don't happen because they probably diminish the amount of control that older white men have over corporate space, said Tillery. Most workers are pretty docile in the face of management, he said. Most people go away quietly. They don't organize. This guy considers him a progressive Democrat, by the way. This is a progressive, by the way. When companies that showcase DEI policies like Starbucks and REI resist employees' attempts to unionize, organizers can sometimes gain leverage by accusing them of hypocrisy and tarnishing their progressive reputations. I don't think companies were ever particularly sincere about this to begin with. To Jan Berzak, who helped start the union organizing campaign at Starbucks. But if we are going to be able to somehow persuade them to do the right thing, the best leverage we have is consumer opinion. Even if it was hollow, at least companies weren't able to just explicitly do that. Mr. Sankara of The Nation acknowledged that retreating from DEI programs could pose risks and said he believed that many corporate DEI initiatives were well-intentioned efforts by liberal human resources officials and managers looking for the next civil rights frontier. But he said the emphasis on diversity was nonetheless harmful because it pushed workers to dwell on their differences and trained politicians to court racial and ethnic groups rather than appealing to the interests that were more universal. What comes next might be worse, Mr. Sankara said, but it has a chance to be better. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for me this week. I'm going to send you over to VO for the VO's birthday stream, chat. VO's birthday stream. If VO hits her birthday goals, you'll be able to get revenge for all the times you were forced to listen to Ya. The big 4-0? No. I think, no. No. All right, everybody. Stay safe out there. Solidarity forever. Hope you appreciate the show. Thank you so much for hanging with me. We'll be back soon. I might do a bonus stream on Sunday. We'll see how I feel. All right, everybody. See you tonight. Don't forget, in the Discord, we have movie night. We're watching Canadian Bacon. Here's the link. All right, everybody. Stay safe out there. Solidarity forever, my friends. I'll see you all soon. Peace out.